What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? What's going on, gang? Welcome to the Monday show. Yet another Monday. These weeks just go by and they go by. I can't believe we're already June 10th. Like a third of the way into the baseball season already. Pretty wild how quickly it goes. It really does. Feels like just a minute ago we were talking about opening day. Kind of guessing at what all these teams and these players and everything were. Now we kind of know. Now we've got a kind of an idea of how things are going this year. We've got kind of an idea who some of the young kids are going to be, what some of the older guys are going to do this year. At least, a little bit of an angle toward it. Nothing definitive yet. Guys can obviously turn things around, but man, is the calendar flying by. Hopefully you guys had good weekends out there. Had a lot of fun on Saturday night. Yanks lost. Pretty ugly loss. I'm sure some of you guys saw that one, but had a good time. Met my buddy Brian in Midtown, got a burger, hung out for a little while. Burgers took too long, so we got to the game a little bit late. But watched the Yankees lose over a few innings and a few beers, and then lazy kind of a Sunday. Just was here, did projections and stuff. Pretty easy Sunday. But hopefully you guys had good weekends out there. We've got a good slate to talk about. 7:40 start time for just a little six-gamer today. Nothing crazy. Should be a fairly quick, breezy show, at least by our standards. So we'll be here talking till about 6:30. Fanatic, what's going on, buddy? Good to see you. Lone Wolf is here. Clintwood83 is here. What's going on, Clintwood? Cujo Blue, hope your day's going well too, pal. Starting the week off well, hopefully, everybody out there. Anybody have Monday off today? 3-day weekend action? Anything like that? Any vacation? Anybody doing anything like really cool for a summer vacation this year or anything? No real plans here. It's a nice, beautiful day out. Joker and I took a nice stroll. That was about it. Monty, you too, pal. Good luck to you. You have a wonderful week as well. Are you just popping in or are you hanging out for a while, Monty? Good to see you either way. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Work from home. There you go, Lone Wolf. That's the move. That is the move. So if you haven't already subscribed, hit the subscribe bell down there. Helps you get notifications when these shows are scheduled. Every now and then the time hops around a little bit. Jump into our Discords if you haven't already. And check out our pals over at AceMind. AceMind.io. This one right down here. ACEMIND.io. The dot is the period on your keyboard. Just the one tiny little at the bottom. It's right next to the question mark and the slash and the shift key. I actually had to look. So check those guys out. Optimizer. Sim, MLB, WNBA, regular NBA. Damn it, I did it again. I got to break that habit of saying regular NBA. WNBA, NBA, PGA, I think, is up there. NASCAR, I think, is up there. I gotta remember what's the other products are for the sports that I don't actually play. They've got all kinds of great stuff over there. They're the least expensive action in the industry as far as I can tell in terms of what they're asking for some of these powerful sim tools they've got. Your first 3 days over there are always for free. Quick little trial period. And then if you use promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, 20% off your first month. So it's PGA, college basketball for when that's in season, WNBA, NBA, MMA, NFL, and of course, we're in the heart of the MLB season, and they've got a great product up for that. Optimizer and Sim. So check those guys out, acemind.io. Pop it into the banners here real quick for you. Some kickback info in there as usual. Appreciate everybody. Mom is here. Enter the door, click like. Not sure anybody deserves it more than Terry. That's nice of you, pal. Lone Wolf, don't tell my boss I'm watching your shows. Secret safe with me, buddy. How did I learn how to build my MLB models? There was an old video once upon a time that was up on YouTube. I forget who made it, like 10, 12 years ago at this point. And part of it, like part of the foundation of it came from that. Part of the foundation of it came from tearing apart an Excel file. There was this guy who, in the Stone Ages of doing this stuff, had Excel sheets that he put out and he sold, and I broke one of them and just saw how he was doing things, and kind of took some stuff from this is how you get to that point, and then created my own formulas and stuff, gave it my own weights, started doing that. And that's why some of it is just hodgepodge together over the years. That's why, like I've shown, I have to do the schedule twice, once here and once there, this one with the runs. So like some of it comes from various pieces. Some of it is, freshly built. Like the home run model is just kind of trial and error and just trying to boil things down to, some kind of working formula. And that's where this power column here is its own individual calculation that kind of should run along with, players' ISOs. Not nearly the same calculation, right? A 6.20 for Royce Lewis versus a 588 ISO. I guess it was a bad example. A 5.78 versus a 1.79. But this should be like a calculation of a player's ability to drive the ball to a degree. But it was on my own number that I cooked up at once upon a time, and it's still in here because it also feeds the home run model. But if you ask me how this number comes together, I literally could not tell you. I do not remember what is involved in that. It's some extrapolation of hard hit and hard hit barrel. What else is in there? Yeah, see, I completely forget. So there's a lot of different things that that came together to make this. But if anybody out there is looking, I just encourage you to Google and things that you can't find out in how did somebody do this specifically for an MLB model, you can piece together yourself just from knowing how Excel works. And you can Google any kind of Excel formula. How do I grab this from there and do this with it? Just Google the idea, and there's 17 different websites that'll give you a step-by-step or give you the exact formula that you need on how to pull information out of, like when I do the confirm lineups, right? You've seen me put the confirm lineups in here, and then there's this ridiculous formula. Can you see that? You can't. How about now? So like that's the formula to extrapolate the player name from the Fantasy Labs name. So if I just took like for example, we put that in there, but we only want to tell it Charlie Blackmon. So that's the formula that strips out just the name Charlie Blackmon. That was a formula that I just had to go find. All right, if I have all this crap in front of it, and you can find some other, you can find an example that's like, all right, close enough, and then you just keep on building it out until it works for you. So it was a lot of stuff like that. There are many, 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 many hours in this thing over the years. Yeah, nice. Nice, Mama. Mama's saying he explained some stuff on a show a long time ago in Sloppy Station days. Remember, it was a show with Terry and Emac. Ended up coming in 16th that day. That's why I remember. Willie K also points out that ChatGPT can do a lot of things for you for this stuff these days, and everyone uses Python now, is what Lone Wolf was saying. Yeah, there's a lot of Python development. I just don't really know Python, and I've always been able to do this. And you can also have ChatGPT build Python models for you. But I've just always kind of had this and just kind of ran with it. What I was going to do with Python was build myself sim tools. But then like the Ace Mine guys are out there and they've done that, and it's kind of there for me to use. So I just haven't done it. But yeah, that's where I would turn to Python, would probably be to do sims. I used to do sims, and Colin Sutherland points out, Colin is on the R side of the Python versus R debate. But yes, same kind of idea, right? More advanced programming languages. I used to do sims in, there's the old-fashioned way to do it, which is the sorting tables. And then do I have a sim results table in here? I don't. So this was the old sorting table that I have. These are some old lineups in here. This is filtered down to something. So there's no projections in behind here, right? Because this is from some old slate. But you can see it tell you like what was the stack makeup, what were the stacks, and then there's some formulas over here that do like ownership percentile, home run rating, percentile projection, and then a calculation that gave me a ranking, and then I could get in here and I could change this to add a little bit of weight to different teams, different players. Players are further over as individuals. I had this that just did a full search of how many times did a specific combo come up, right? Across, so if I drop 1,500 lineups in here, can you guys see that part? I keep forgetting to see what's actually on screen. Oh, you can't see any of this. So that's what this one over here was doing. It was just searching in here. So in that pool of lineups that's in just living in here right now, because it's from weeks ago, the last time I used this, Like New York KC combo, Yankees KC combo was in there 3 times. Seattle Houston was in that pool 3 times for whatever this is searching against. With the idea being, all right, at a certain point, if it's just building hundreds and hundreds of versions of this combo or tens and tens of versions of this specific combo in a package of 1,500 lineups that I dash off over a bunch of different lineup builds, different crunches, whatever you want to call them, then maybe that's a combo I want to pay attention to, even though it might sort out ownership-wise as a bit over-owned. Just because it's not necessarily in the top 150, like I wanted to make sure that I was getting more and more of those combos. So just another way to do things, but obviously the sim thing has kind of surpassed that in a lot of ways. It's a little bit old-fashioned to do it that way. So there's different ways to go about things. But yes, Python is very strong for doing sims and doing more advanced versions of this. Anyway, all that is to say, we've got a 6-game slate that looks pretty good up top. The Rockies against the Twins, 3.37 implied total for the Rockies. Looks like a pretty good spot to deploy what I'm sure is going to be a very popular Chris Paddock today. We just saw Andre Palante have a monster game against this Rockies team. Hopefully you guys got to him as a really cheap option yesterday, or either yesterday or Saturday, whenever that game was. He was the key to unlocking a lot of different combinations on both sides, and that game had a monster. Paddock is a better pitcher in a vacuum, so should have pretty big upside. We've seen him go up and down in a few spots this year. There's a couple real big blow-up spots, but Rockies against a righty on the road, premium. Dakota Hudson going for Colorado. You can see a 5.25 implied total for the Twins, the highest overall total on the board. I love their opportunity for some run creation. Hudson is in no way good, but you'll see it in a minute. There's a little bit of an impact to the home run model for the Twins, just based on what Hudson typically can do, which is keep the ball down, keep the ball in the yard a little bit. He did give up 2 home runs in his last game. He gave up 2 home runs in an earlier game this season, and then a couple of games in there with 1. He's not invulnerable to power, but he does diminish their chances for home runs a little bit. So maybe some run scoring opportunity here with a little bit lessened of a home run expectation. The Blue Jays against the Brewers, 8-run total there. 3.95 total on the Blue Jays side, 4.14 on the Brewers side. Colin Ray on the mound for the Brewers leads me to the Blue Jays a little bit. It's a pitcher I've done well targeting over time, can tend to give up a little bit of power and have some big blow-up games, but can also pitch well from time to time. And obviously Vegas, not the highest overall implied total on the Toronto side. So it's one we'll have to look at, but some of those bats may be a little bit rounding into form as well. It's a more interesting lineup than it was. Jose Barrios on the mound for Toronto. Definitely good cause to at least consider some of those Brewers bats. Yankees at the Royals. We'll see whether the Yanks get Juan Soto back. He's in the projected lineup, but that's just speculation right now. But word was that he's only going to be out for a few days, so might be back today. Either way, Yanks against Seth Lugo look pretty good. 4.53 implied total with all the Yankees power bats in play. And then on the other side, the Royals drawing a 4.07 against Carlos Rodon, who has pitched well this season and has pitched 6 innings or more in the bulk of his starts. So DFS-wise, looks fairly good, but the Royals have been frisky. They're not the highest strikeout bunch in the world, and Rodon, in a lot of ways, has been getting a little bit lucky with what he's doing this year. So maybe a little bit more challenging of a spot than it looks like for him. Kind of a pushover spot on the board for Logan Gilbert. He's pitching for the Mariners tonight. 3.14 implied total for the Chicago White Sox on the other side of that one. And then coming back the other way, Eric Fede actually drawing pretty interesting projections against this low-end Mariners team with all their swing and miss. We do have Julio on a bit of a tear and kind of rounding back into form after another really slow start. But Fede hasn't been bad. He's been finding nice strikeout totals. He can definitely give up some runs, but that's been a very, very gettable Mariners team. So interesting pitching on both sides, but the Mariners are drawing a 4.46 because in a lot of ways, Fede's not all that good. Athletics at the Padres, another really interesting one. Dylan Cease, monster projection today going up against Oakland. He's got them checked down to a 3.02 implied total. He's at a 4.58 on the Padres side of things. They're huge favorites in this game. Every reason in the world to expect that he's going to have a big DFS start here with a bunch of strikeouts in that lineup. Hasn't been completely on peak form, though. If we're looking back in game log watching, he's given up a handful of runs in each of his last 5 or 6 starts. So it's one that doesn't really come with worries, but maybe just like a little bit of, well, that kind of a thing to it. On the A side, Joey Estes, who we did just get away with against that Mariners team, against the Padres team that he's got at a 4.58 implied total. Probably not a lot of reason to go to Joey S this year, but he's been pitching effectively enough, and they've been shaky enough that it wouldn't completely stun me if he had an okay start. Last game up, the Astros at the Giants. 4.35 implied total for the Astros. On the other side, 4.24 implied total. Pretty close one there. Spencer Arrighetti going for Houston, and Kyle Harrison on the mound for the Giants. So it's a really interesting slate. Equally high totals for some of the good teams, or one of the middle of the road kind of teams that scores a decent amount of runs against a fairly bad pitcher, and then a lot of back and forth. But you've got some fair teams here in the middle. In the 4.5s, 4.3 to 4.5 kind of a range. So decent expectation of run scoring today. Like I said, Cease primed for a monster. It's one of the bigger pitching projections we've had all season. Everybody's getting full innings now. Willie K said just no ball. Yeah, knowing ball is also good. At the very least, you can do all of this. Going back to the conversation before about the spreadsheet, if you know how to do math and you know how to work a spreadsheet or program Python or give ChatGPT the correct prompts these days, you can do all of this without knowing the sports at all. But it certainly helps to know the sports, and it at worst, it's a very good guide rail to know the sports, right? Am I doing something dumb? Does this number not make any sense? Well, yeah, if I know the sport a little bit, I know that if I had, let's say Dakota Hudson at the top of the board with Dylan Cease's projection, something would look wrong there. So, yeah, knowing the sport helps out a lot. Paddock and Fede is an interesting and weird combination, Lone Wolf, but it's not completely crazy based on where they're projected here. You can see and maybe that's a little bit of knowing the game tells me that I'm not overly comfortable with Eric Fede being the third highest projected pitcher. But again, he has been finding some strikeouts. 86.78. He's priced for a pitcher in that kind of a range. It is a fairly high projection for him. The question is how much ceiling is really on it. Will definitely need to be on form to find ceiling on top of that. But for that money around that medium projection is perfectly fine. And then you can see on the in the Colorado game, Paddock projects out very, very well for his cost. 7,800 on FanDuel, 7,100 on DraftKings. Easy to get to him, and a great combination of bats from two full stacks on the FanDuel slate. And then I think both of those guys are priced very, very effectively to just use in tandem with Cease and Gilbert at the top of the board. Or if you even wanted to take either Fede or Paddock, and probably for me it's Paddock more often than not at the cheaper price, combining them with Rodon, maybe even Barrios. Not awful. Spencer Arrighetti, I think you could get away with on DraftKings. It's a lot of really cheap, really interesting prices on DraftKings today. Yeah, especially if you're hedging it there, Lone Wolf, playing some Seattle and some other lineups, then yeah, absolutely. So Cease, again, top of the board, highest price player on pitcher on DraftKings, second on the FanDuel slate to Logan Gilbert, and a pretty appreciable gap there. Cease is the higher end overall pitcher in terms of strikeouts and a lot of the things we care about for DFS. He's got the worst matchup, the slightly shakier matchup, but not by much. I mean, the Athletics are very high strikeout and not very good. It's just the White Sox are just shockingly bad. So either one of these guys, both of those guys, easily in play. You could let the pricing decide it for you. You could let ownership decide it for you, but I would want to have a pretty solid share of both of those guys going across 150 lineups. Again, Fede, decent strikeout upside, decent ability to hopefully at least a little bit of believable upside to limit Seattle. Paddock I talked about. Rodon is, again, it's kind of a little bit of luck baked in there. The strikeouts are way down overall for this season, but he's been pitching deep into games. He's been making everything work. So I don't think he's necessarily mispriced. I definitely think he's projected correctly. It's just a rough matchup with that pretty quality KC lineup on the other side. Barrios, I think you guys probably by now from watching other shows know that he's not my favorite pitcher in the league. I think he's just generally around like a league average type of a talent. Gets a little bit more credit than that in a lot of ways. Not the easiest matchup in the world with Milwaukee on the other side. Just kind of projects in the middle of the board. That said, you're not breaking the bank. If I'm building 150 lineups, I would include him in the portfolio at 91 on FanDuel. And at 8,000 on DraftKings, honestly, it's actually a pretty good price. It's not far off from like Fede at 78, a couple bucks cheaper in a better matchup, you definitely want to be mixing in Jose Barrios shares over there. He'd be an effective SP2 if you can pay for him in like Logan Gilbert, let's say. I think that's a pretty good combo. Same with Rodon and Logan Gilbert, Rodon and Dylan Cease, however you want to go about that. A couple of former White Sox aces, you pair them together. Lone Wolf loves the Minnesota stack. The one concern I have there is, like I said, just the general limitation around the long ball. But you can see where Dakota Hudson's projected on the board, like the model in Vegas, and everybody agrees that Dakota Hudson's going to give up some runs and lose this game. It's just without the home run upside, and again, I shouldn't say without, but like with a more limited, slightly home run upside. What is our DFS score? Does it look like a 5 or 6 run game where they score a decent handful of runs in an MLB sense against Dakota Hudson, but it's based on a few singles, some doubles, some runs, some base running, and they don't really get there. Like, you can get angled out a lot without if they don't happen to get a home run against them. But again, it's not like it's a situation where we're talking about somebody who is just completely invulnerable to the long ball. Arrighetti, I think, believable upside. He's been decent in spots. He's very cheap at 6,500 against that Giants team. And pitchers park, a little bit of strikeout potential in that game. I don't dislike that spot. Kyle Harrison, I do think, is a very talented kid. He's been a little bit shaky so far this year. He hasn't really come out as that top end ace lefty. And a lot of prospects kind of underperforming this season. Jackson Chourio leaps to mind as a big problematic one for me. But a lot of these promotions that got so rushed this year with the the benefits of bringing guys up early now, and the idea of getting away from leaving them down on the farm to gain an extra year of control and all that shit. Now we're getting a lot of kids coming up maybe before they are completely fully seasoned. Harrison's been good in spots, effective in spots, but he's gettable here. So going up against that Houston team feels like a spot where we can maybe look at some of those Houston bats. But he's good enough, 84-74, especially at the DraftKings price. No issues whatsoever with playing some of them. It's just really tough matchup, really low strikeout Houston lineup. Colin Ray, like I said, more of a target for me. I do think it's 62-72, though, especially with the way he projects out. Perfectly believable that he could succeed for those prices. He's done it before. We've seen enough quality from him over time. He's got a little bit of strikeout potential on the right slate. So it wouldn't completely shock me to see Colin Ray succeed. I think he's on the board as like a value dart throw. Seth Lugo against the Yankees, a little bit rough. I question what the ceiling really looks like. I think he's overperformed largely in a lot of spots this season. He hasn't been bad. You can see where the price is on FanDuel. I just think that's a little bit bananas. And I think at 8,400, we're just a little bit out of order against the Yankees. I think other places probably have them a little bit higher than I do projection-wise. But I didn't really want to put my thumb on it all that much. Doesn't really look like a great Seth Lugo spot. So happy to skip him at those prices. Joey Estes again. San Diego's been low end enough that maybe he can succeed, but there's not a ton of strikeout potential. So pretty down board. And then Dakota Hudson's a pretty strong no with Minnesota drawing a 5+ total against. And we got both of these lineups to start the show. Beautiful. For those of you who weren't here at the top, welcome. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. Check out acemind.io. And we are going to talk Twins and Rockies in just a half a second. Willie Castro at the top of the lineup tonight for the Twins. Just got cut today by the Dynasty team, looking to pick up a few additional stolen bases. He's a good stolen base option, but he hasn't done anything in that department lately. So I went with Ryan Bliss, but now he's Castro's in the leadoff spot. Kind of wish I had him in there tonight. He's getting on base at a 343 clip. He's stolen 7 bags, 250, 343, 398, creating runs 17% better than average. A lot of that came from a very, very hot start, and he's kind of cooled over the last few weeks. But quality enough bat at the top of the lineup to set the pace for the Twins. And again, it is, I think, going to be a relatively high-scoring day. You can see all the quality for run creation that the Twins have, and ignore, obviously, the 256, the 941 slug, the 588 ISO from Royce Lewis. Don't completely ignore it because he's hitting third today and he's terrific. But I assure you these numbers will come down. But he's a very good option himself. Point being, a lot of run creation at the top, decent amount of power if they can find it against Dakota Hudson here. Couple of stolen bases for each of these guys. A lot of expectation of scoring at least like 1 through 5, and then a couple quality power bats there. So it's a very interesting Twins lineup. But you can see the impact that I'm talking about with Hudson. these numbers against a lot of other starters would be significantly higher up. Hudson is giving up a 42.2% hard hit rate, but he's kept home runs to just 2.52% over 61 2/3, 12 starts this year. He's done that largely by limiting launch angles, 6.6 degree average launch. It's also mostly missed barrels, 6.3%. Barrel rate is not atrocious against. So we care less about the hard hits and the contact outside of those hard hits are typically going to go for like doubles and stuff against this pitcher. That's how he gets to his 5.25 ERA, his 5.12 xFIP. He allows a ton of contact, 12.6% strikeout rate, 11.9% walks. He's also given up a lot of free passes. This is not a good pitcher. Nothing in what I'm saying is saying don't play the Twins against Dakota Hudson. They're easily the best. Well, they're easily one of the best spots on the board, if not the best spot on the board for expectation of run creation. If you look back over time with Hudson, what I'm talking about with that launch angle, with that home run rate remains true. 4.6 degree average launch last year, 2.54% home run rate in a similarly sized sample. Year before, in a larger sample, 6.3 degree average launch, 1.51% home run rate. So the one thing he does is kind of sometimes sort of check home run upside. Does that mean that Max Kepler can't hit a home run? No. Does that mean that Royce Lewis can't hit a home run? Of course not. There is power potential here. It's just maybe a little sliced down from where some of these guys might normally land. Chris Paddack going up against the bad Rockies lineup, one of the more gettable lineups in all of baseball. Rockies, righty, road, all of that. Seems like an easy kind of just glance at this slate, and that's where you would land. It was certainly my first instinct just looking at the slate. And the way I typically build the placeholder is I get to the bats and then I see what's left for pitching. And then if I need more for pitching, I make some changes in the bats. And today it was just like bats, loaded it up with the best possible lineup I could combine. And Chris Paddack fit right in. So that worked out. And it's just kind of straight line to the easiest play on the board. What I'm saying is I think that's going to make Chris Paddack excessively popular today. But he's pretty worth it. 21.3% strikeout rate over 65 innings in 12 starts. That could be higher, but he's doing it on an 11% strikeout swinging strike rate, and he's going up against the confirmed lineup that has a 26.7% strikeout rate this season. There's good strikeout upside for Paddack. With the quality that he's shown, he's got a 5.26 ERA, but a 3.83 xFIP under that, a very high whip at 1.42, given that he's got a 4.9% walk rate. So probably seeing a little bit of bad luck baked in here. Batting average on balls in play against is currently .337. Where's all that whip coming from? That's a high batting average on balls in play, but I mean it's not. I was expecting higher, 370s, something just stupid. So that is a high whip. It's a lot of base runners for this walk rate, but he's largely, controlled what's in his control, it looks like. So I think there's maybe additional upside to come from Chris Paddack. He has given up some hard hits, some exit velo. It's on a 14-degree average launch. He's given up a 10% barrel. There's certainly a little bit of home run upside on the Rockies side. You can see some decent numbers, unspectacular but decent numbers coming through there. Michael Toglia jumping up to an 11.1. He was down here in the projected version of the lineup. He was at like a 10. I do like Hunter Goodman down the bottom of this lineup. He's got some power upside for sure. Has only hit 2 home runs and has a 167 ISO so far over 64 plate appearances. But a couple power threats in there. But by and large, this is a very, very gettable lineup. So I think all the Paddack shares in the world makes a ton of sense. There are a couple other spots you can jump around to on the board though, because it's a very, very fair price board on both sites today. And DraftKings ridiculously so. DraftKings is ludicrously cheap today. So if you don't like the Paddack play or if you just want to avoid the field, there's other spots to go to. It's just that guy on the other side is not one of them. So going back to the Twins lineup, Castro from the top, especially second base and outfield eligible. You just pop him in at second base on DK. He's just kind of an also-ran outfielder at 41. But at second base, I kind of like him for that price. 4-position eligibility for 28 on FanDuel. Pop him in wherever you want. Again, it's been a bit of a decline over the last 2-3 weeks from where he had started the season, and it's more of a normalization, a regression to the norm. But he's good for counting stats. It's a killer spot in hitting leadoff ahead of some of these guys, and he's got a 343 on base, so appreciable correlated scoring ability for a pretty cheap price in a key lineup today. Trevor Larnach for 4,200, 6 home runs from the left side this season, 130 plate appearances, pretty good results so far. A 179 ISO on 9.8% barrels, 48.9% hard hits. Solid power production, not striking out egregiously so far, just 20% so far. Definitely a very playable outfield bat for just 4,200, if not more than that. Royce Lewis, 5,900, 3,400 is very expensive on the DraftKings slate. Less so. That 3,400 plays a lot more effectively on FanDuel at third base against their cap than 59 on the DraftKings cap. Fortunately, everybody else on the lineup and all the pitchers today are really, really cheap, so no real impact playing Royce Lewis there for 59. Absolute priority in this lineup on both sides. 3 home runs and 20 plate appearances so far, a 588 ISO. Just a tremendous opportunity for him going forward if he can stay healthy the rest of the season. Last year, 239 plate appearances, hit 15 home runs, had a 240 ISO and a 155 WRC+. That came on 11.7% barrels, 41.4% hard hits. It's tremendous potential here. Max Kepler, pretty decent contact this year, down a little bit from last year. More in line with 2 years ago. Not really striking out, drawing his walks as usual. 4 home runs, 168 ISO, 115 WRC+. There's room for more home runs. There's room for more ISO. Kepler's a very effective lefty bat for 4,500, 2,700 hitting cleanup today. So I like the Kepler play. I like Carlos Correa. A lot of barrels, a lot of hard hits out of Correa, right in line with what he's done over the last few seasons. Strikeouts and walks look pretty similar to where they've been. 5 home runs, creating runs 20% better than average. I don't really know, and doing it at a cheap DFS price on both sites, particularly at 43 on DraftKings, this price against their cap kind of offsets any concerns about a higher price there relative to this and this. These are obviously a lot closer. Like I said, after you get through the 5 spot, a lot of expectation for success through the top 5. After you get through there, you're dealing with a little bit more of might put a 0 into your lineup, might break the slate for you kind of days with Carlos Santana and Alex Kirilloff down there. Santana's got 9 home runs, a 172 ISO, but just a 98 WRC plus on 217, 300, 389. Decent number of hard hits out of him at 40%. Barrels are okay, not striking out a lot. So doing Carlos Santana things, and he's cheap. I do think he's easily playable. It's just on a day where we expect a lot more ground balls, a lot more limited launch angle. Do we really want to go to the guy who's just, kind of home run or bust? Same thing with Kirilloff, 10.7% barrels, 41.1% hard hits are tremendous. He's got 5 home runs, a 190 ISO, quality numbers there, but a 209 and 275 at the front end of the triple slash, 9% worse than average for run creation on a day where we want to be looking for run creation, looking for a little bit of sequencing and playability. Kirilloff becomes a little bit more limited situationally. He probably won't be all that popular, though, and for $37.25, you can absolutely buy a little bit of upside for him to go out and actually do his thing, find some success, and hit that low-owned home run. So playable, but not a priority for both of these two guys. Manny Margot, Christian Vasquez, you can see that Vasquez at the bottom of the lineup, really, really low projected, really limited results so far. He did hit a home run the other night when I said this about him, that he was basically shot and not playable. So maybe a little bit of sneaky power upside on a bad matchup for power. And then Manny Margot every now and again can get a hold of one or get on and steal you a base, but mostly is here for defense, which doesn't really score points for DFS. So it is a little bit limited at the bottom. This is another reason to potentially be a little concerned about the Twins in terms of just these bottom 4 guys and their ability to turn the lineup over and give it back to these guys with some opportunity. Not that Dakota Hudson's going to do anything to limit their potential, and if you can envision success against anyone, well, Dakota Hudson with a 12.6% strikeout rate and an 11.9% walk rate definitely fits that bill. So I'm not worried about it. It's just a note to be made, that these guys not the best for turning the lineup over. But a tremendous matchup, a tremendous run total for the Twins. All the reason in the world to go to the top 5, and then a couple quality mixers at the bottom. I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world, especially if you take a big paddock position. If you play the popular paddock position, is how I should have started that. If you do that, it's not the worst idea in the world to maybe grab a few Rocky stacks as a hedge. Charlie Blackmon has not been all that great this season. He's got 5 stolen bases, 2 home runs, just an 86 WRC plus
We're just a 326 on base. It's not a tragic on base, but it's definitely not ideal for the leadoff spot. And when all he really does these days is put the ball in play and hopefully get on base, you'd like to see a little bit more on base, a little bit more run creation. He's playable, but kind of limited off the top. That said, it is a lefty bat off the top of the lineup. Ezequiel Tovar, 4,600, 3,200, has been pretty effective this season. 286 plate appearances, 294, 325, 487. 193 ISO, creating runs 14% better than average. The overall numbers are pretty solid. He's made some clear steps forward this year. Probably got picked up over the last few weeks off of your waiver wire finally. If you play season long, people are starting to believe like he is. Elias Diaz, 44.29, still slashing 305, 353, 442, getting regular plate appearances in the third or fourth spot in this lineup. An effective catcher bat. If you want him on the DraftKings slate, I do think you can one-off him over there if you just want to take some shots against Paddock. He's got a 353 on base. He's creating runs 10% better than average, so he's capable of getting involved. There's not much walk in Chris Paddock, but Diaz doesn't walk a ton. He just puts a lot of balls in play, so I don't mind the option. Not a priority by any means. 4,500, 2,900, fairly effective price for Ryan McMahon, who is having a very good season. His contact is great this year, 13.2% barrels, 54.5% hard hits. He has seen a dip in his results lately. The ISO has come down a little. The average is certainly plummeting. The on base is plummeting. But that's within the range of expectation, and the power output is still pretty good. 10 home runs on the year, a 108 WRC plus for run creation, still above water. But we're starting to take on water with the super upside season for Ryan McMahon in a lot of ways. I do think, though, as a lefty power bat in this lineup against Chris Paddock, if you're going to Rockies, he's still your top priority guy or one of your top priority guys. Brenton Doyle for 37.31, still pretty effectively priced. Top of this lineup a little bit more expensive on the FanDuel slate. Not that they're expensive by any stretch of the imagination, but they're a little bit more pricey, I think, relative to the FanDuel cap than they are to that DraftKings cap. A little bit more room on DraftKings, but very close either way. Doyle's got 5 homers, 17 steals. He slipped below the league average at 99 WRC plus, but close enough. Toglia, tons of power upside. 11.1 in the home run model. Again, 3,600, 2,400. He's got 4 home runs and 63 plate appearances. Doesn't really do anything else, but can definitely hit the ball for power. 13.9% barrels, 50% hard hits in a tiny sample of batted ball events, 233 ISO. Absolutely in play if you're going to this team. Jake Cave, mix and match part in the outfield, more of just another outfielder for 27-22. That said, he's cheap. He can help make things work. Goodman, I mentioned before, I do love the power upside. I hit a bunch of minor league home runs for this team. First and outfield for 35 is okay on DraftKings. Outfield and catcher first base on FanDuel, which again is the same thing. Those position eligibilities should be reversed. Make him first base and outfield on FanDuel. Give him catcher eligibility on DraftKings. He's instantly more interesting. Adil Amador, by the way, bottom of the lineup, dead minimum price on DraftKings, 2,300 on FanDuel. One of their top prospects. Depending on where you're looking, he's a top 100 league-wide prospect. The Graphs preseason report, he's 107 overall, but second organizationally. Really, really well, highly regarded hit tool. A little bit of speed, but supposed to hit for average. Supposed to be able to drive the ball a little bit, like mid-range on a good year, 15 home run type of a guy, but capable of stealing bases and definitely known for being like an average and on-base type of a skill set. So an interesting enough player at the bottom of the lineup for the dead minute shortstop on dead minute shortstop on DraftKings, 23, same position on FanDuel. He's already stolen a base, just 3 plate appearances so far, but an interesting guy to keep in mind down there. So it's Twins bats, Chris Paddock, and then a couple darts at Rockies bats, a hedge position, build a little wall around your Paddock shares with Rockies bats if you go that route. Jake Swales, am I crazy for liking Lugo against the Yanks coming off the big weekend series? I don't love the Lugo play today. Like I said, it wouldn't completely stun me. He's had a couple of really good starts. A couple of the best starts of the year came against, the Athletics, the Angels, the Blue Jays. He had a pretty good start. The Tigers at Detroit, he had a good one. A lot of the better teams, he had pretty clunky ones. It's not a pitcher I really trust all that much, but it's not the craziest thing in the world, especially short slate, and you know what you're doing, so it's not like you're picking a pitcher for just no reason, just like, oh, I like that name, I like that price, like, you know what you're doing. Stellar might be strong, Jake. We'll get to that one. Let's see if we got lineups here. Does not look like lineups trickling out today. It's just 4:10 though, and this is a 7:40 start time, so I get it. It's too bad there wasn't like one game at like 7:15 or something like that today, so that they could have threaded in that there's a 6:50 game between the Rays and the Orioles. Corbin Burns going against Ryan Pepio, a couple of interesting pitchers, but with a 6:50 to 7:40 gap, I guess they didn't want to. Neither site wanted to start at 6:50, unfortunately. But anyway, it doesn't look like we've got lineups here. So Colin Ray, like I said, more of a target to me. Really had some success targeting for home runs and power upside against last year. He had a couple of good starts threaded in here. You saw, 21.3% strikeout rate, not terrible. 10.2% swinging strike rate is okay. 28% CSW is all right, not great. And the strike throwing and the strikeouts have kind of taken a pretty big dip over his 63 2/3 this year. He's been giving up similar contact. 10% barrels is up. 40.2% hard hits is down a little bit. 89.8 versus 90.4 miles an hour of exit velo, a little bit down. But nothing about this really says that this is more limited than it was last year. 2.88 versus 4.45. Probably still a little bit of just luck, happenstance, whatever you want to call it in there. Stuff plus, you can see 15 points below average. Not really a great stuff plus rating. He's not striking anybody out this year. He's walking too many again. So I really, really feel like Colin Ray is more of a target for Blue Jays bats. I'm just really surprised to see the Blue Jays below a 4 against this pitcher in that Vegas line. It's just a little surprising. I don't really quibble with the Brewers being the favored team because I'm no real big fan of Jose Barrios either. So I get that. I just feel like the Blue Jays should get a little bit more upside. Like if this was give it an 8.5 total. 4.40 for the Brewer side. I can buy into that and then get the Jays up to 4.1. So just we'll see where that total lands. Maybe it bounces up to 8.5. But I feel like the Blue Jays may be getting a little bit underappreciated here. Not that they've been great. You can see this projected version of the lineup, just a couple of guys creating runs above average. One of those guys is Vladdy Guerrero Jr., who's been mashing the ball. The home runs are coming around a little bit. He's up to 7. Just a 132 ISO. That result is weird in conjunction with an 11.9% barrel rate and 59.2% hard hits. As we looked at one day a couple weeks ago, Vladdy hits a few too many on the ground. Needs to elevate a little, but that launch angle tells me that the elevation is certainly there from time to time, and when he makes contact, he's crushing the ball. Top of the lineup with Davis Schneider, 4,700, 3,100, still effectively priced. He's got a 191 ISO. He's down to 230, 329, 421, but still the run creation mark is at 116 WRC+. Definitely makes some premium contact, 13.7% barrels this year. Last year it was 17.8 in 141 plate appearances, over which he hit 8 home runs. So clearly there's some ability to drive the ball here. 9.93 in the home run model. You get him at second or outfield. Seems like a very playable part. Spencer Horvitz, 2,600 at second base on DraftKings. 2,100 at first base on FanDuel. 8 plate appearances this year. Nothing really to talk about. Last year, 1 home run in 44 plate appearances. A 128 ISO, 106 WRC+. What was he doing so far before the call-up this year? AAA this year, he had 259 plate appearances, 4 home runs, 3 steals, was slashing 335, 456, 514, though, creating runs 57% better than average. Very solid 17% walk rate with a 15.8% strikeout rate. And those are fairly sustained numbers back over the last couple of seasons at the minor league level. Once he was settled in comfortably at the level in any kind of large sample of plate appearances, outside of just like that was his first 100 or 200 plate appearances at AAA in 2020. 2022 there was a bump. But every other year, very, very solid triple slash, 400 plus on base, 330, 330s hitter the last 2 years in AAA. High threes or high twos into the threes the first few seasons in the minors. So there's definitely a hit tool here. There's definitely some on base. Not a ton of power. 4 home runs this year, 10 home runs in 484 plate appearances last year, just 12 the year before. But seems like a pretty well cast 2-hitter and easily could jump into that leadoff spot in the right situation. This is still the projected lineup. We'll see how it shakes out. Vladdy for 5,000 is a discount. 3,400, it's a discount. They're giving him first and third base eligibility. He's got a few starts under his belt at third base this year. 10 plus in the home run model. That's all I need to know to get Vladdy in my lineups for that price. He is way too cheap. The quality's not far off the mark. I know the home run total and the ISO are down a little bit, but nothing about the profile says they should be, so everything should be fine. Bo Bichette, 4,500, 2,900, underperforming massively compared to expectations this year, but that price is so low at this point. He's absolutely a priority if you're going to Blue Jays. I think he's a slate-wide priority at shortstop. I really do. It looks like a killer spot for him. Ray's got a 15.8% strikeout rate. That's a ton of bat on ball. He's got a 45% hard hit rate. That's right in line with where he was last year. The barrels are down a little bit. The average is way down. The on-base percentage is atrocious at 287. He's hit just 4 home runs. He's got a 111 ISO with 83 WRC+. plus. None of it matters to me. I just want that quality of player against this pitcher for that price at shortstop. Just makes a ton of sense. Danny Jansen, the other player in the projected lineup here above the magic number for home run upside. Love the catcher bat, 8.3% barrels this year. It was higher last year in a larger sample, higher the year before in a larger sample. He's got 5 home runs already in 143 plate appearances. Pretty solid triple slash, a 208 ISO. Creating runs 32% better than average. Absolutely a priority bat in this lineup. And I do think, especially if he's hitting top 5, top 6, like you should be. Danny Jansen, playable one-off catcher if you want him on DraftKings at 47. George Springer, another player who over the last few years, I mean, if you told me that in mid-June George Springer was priced at 3,800, 2,700 coming into this season, I would have asked whether one of his feet fell off or something like that. Is just ludicrously low, but he's kind of playing like one of his feet fell off. 76 WRC plus, a 101 ISO, 5 homers, 8 steals, just 203, 291, 304. Big part of the Blue Jays letdown so far this season. Not really striking out, still capable of drawing walks. I do still think that the turnaround is coming somewhere along the way. But you can see we're undercut now from where he used to be in the home run model at just 6.94, underprojected compared to where he used to be. For a while, he was holding, before a lot of the updates got in, he was holding firm with some pretty decent projections, and now we're coming down pretty dramatically for Springer. Still in my plans, still a part of this lineup and a priority bat to stack because he's so cheap, and we know what the ceiling once upon a time was, but it's becoming more and more difficult. Dalton Varsho, today's home run pick of the day, 9.46 in the home run mile. I said that almost like it was going to have like a sponsor attached to it. Today's home run pick of the day brought to you by Wheaties. Make sure you're eating your Wheaties, the breakfast of champions. Use promo code rotoscouts at Wheaties.com and get absolutely nothing because they don't know about us. So Varsho, 4,400, 3,000. Solid little 10 home run output so far this year, 236 ISO. He does it without a ton of premium contact, so I'm not really worried that we're at 29.9% hard hits, 7.5% barrels. It's kind of in line with who he is. So I'm just taking a little bit of a shot at some cheap lefty power from Dalton Varsho. If he climbs the lineup, so much the better. That home run number only goes up. IKF Kevin Kiermaier, a couple of less compelling options from the left side late in the lineup. I am obligated to say that IKF is slashing 275, 319, 394, and has created runs 5% better than average with 4 homers and 3 steals. I still don't think he's a good hitter. He does put the ball in play a lot, though. That is IKF to a T. Lot of singles. Can get involved that way, but not overly reliable. A lot bigger of a reputation as a hitter than actual production. So Barrios, 18.9% strikeout rate, 4.10 xFIP underneath a 2.80 ERA, just 8.3% swinging strikes, 92.24 by Stuff Plus, so we're 7 and change points below average in terms of what Stuff Plus thinks of the arsenal. Giving up a 3.47% home run rate. It's not tragic. It's around average. It's not no home runs. It's not a ton of home runs, but it's some. 43.7% hard hits, 90 plus miles an hour of exit velo. He's easy enough to square up, hit hard, create runs against, hit for power. He struck out more last year at 23.5%. Year before, though, 19.8%, with numbers that look a lot like where he is this year. This was one decent season, 3.65 ERA, a 4.01 xFIP, but it just reinforces my ongoing point about this pitcher is that by and large, this is a slightly above league average pitcher who has a reputation for being a lot better than that. And I think that's kind of cooked into that FanDuel price. At $8,000, I have no qualms with it whatsoever on DraftKings. Perfectly fine. You like Jose Berrios here against the Brewers, which I don't really with the matchup and everything. You can absolutely play him on DraftKings. At 91 on FanDuel, I'm really skeptical. He has thrown 80 and a third innings in 13 starts. He's pitched effectively deep into ball games. He's got 4 quality starts in a row. So I don't want to take those things away from him. He's really only blown up once this season. He had an 8 earned run game. He also struck out 7 in that one. That was against Philly at Philly. He only went 3 2/3, managed to give up 8 earned runs on 7 hits with 2 home runs, but he struck out 7 in that short start. Walked 2. Guess he got pissed off about all the earned runs, or maybe he was cruising. I don't remember that game, so maybe he cruised to 7 strikeouts and then completely imploded. But every game since then, 7 innings, 6, 7, 2 in a row, and then another 6. Hasn't given up more than 3 runs. Couple few strikeouts in each one, 4, then 6 was the high across that stretch. Struck out 5 twice. Last time out, 2 earned runs on 6 hits over 6 innings to Baltimore. Just 2 strikeouts, 3 walks, give up a homer. Not an ideal DFS start. The 2 before that were a little bit better. Earned run on 6 hits over 7 innings against Pittsburgh. Struck out 5. Got the quality start, but no win. Hasn't gotten a win in his last 3 starts. That's not his fault, obviously. 7 innings against the Tigers, 7 hits, 2 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, 1 home run. He's not bad. Nobody's saying he's bad, but he's easily beatable. He's no ace, and even his good days are not usually slate winning. They're just like, all right, that was okay. Let me see what my bats do. You know, he's not going to run out and on a lot of slates, not going to run out there and grab you a 15-point advantage over every other pitcher. And the Brewers are good enough against. Right? 4.14 total with a little bit of believable upside based on some current year performance and based on some actual talent in this lineup. Bunch of guys, just 2 guys below league average for run creation, depending on what the lineup actually looks like. Bunch of guys well above league average, including most of their stars. Bryce Turang in the top lineup, in the top spot in the lineup, 4,500, 3,200, has 23 stolen bases, slashing 306, 369, 421. 127 WRC plus. William Contreras just continues to hit 309, 376, 475 for him, a 142 WRC plus. Christian Yelich for 57.39, appropriately priced like the star that he is. 324, 404, 517, creating runs 60% better than average. 6 homers, 10 steals, over 167 plate appearances, a 50% hard hit rate. Yelich is easy to get to in this lineup if you're building with them. I believe I read a tweet that I did not bother to verify because I don't really care about batting average. But since I'm looking at it, I believe, according to this tweeter anyway, this is the only regular top 3. And the way he put it was like, not Volpe, Soto, Judge, not blah, 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 blah. Otani, Betts, Otani, Freeman, etc. It's the only 3-man combo at the top of any lineup across baseball, all hitting 300 plus. I think that was the point. And again, I don't really care about average, but these guys are creating runs spectacularly well. They do have decent counting stat output for DFS purposes. Everybody runs a little bit. Everybody up and down this lineup runs a little bit just organizationally. But those 3 top guys have been tremendous this year. Willy Adames, not far behind. 10.1% barrels and 40.4% hard hits so far this year. Fairly expensive at $3,500 on FanDuel. Not incorrectly so. Pretty cheap at $4,400 on DraftKings. 243, 325, 418. He's been effective enough with the triple slash. 9 home runs, 8 steals, 175 ISO, 113 WRC plus. Not a bad 4th man in if you're going to this Brewers lineup. Not a guy that's necessarily like a standout one-off shortstop option today, but at that price, you could do worse. Over here, it's a little bit less of a one-off. That's not a bad option there. Sal Frelick, 33-27. Effective enough, 8 stolen bases, gets on at a 336 clip. More of a correlated scoring player, 0.6% barrels, 20.8% hard hits. You can see why. Rhys Hoskins more than makes up for the lack of barrels and hard hits. He's at 14.5% barrels, 39.5% hard hits is actually a little bit low for him. You can see 2 years ago, 11.1% and 44.2%. 10 home runs, all the power in the world, 222 ISO, 125 WRC plus. Anytime Rhys Hoskins is in the lineup, if you're going to this team, he is a fairly high priority bat. 9.92 in the home run model today. Jake Bauers, Joey Ortiz, Blake Perkins. You could do worse at the bottom of the lineup, too. This is not a bad Brewer squad. 5 home runs apiece for those guys. Bauers at just 206, 300, 390, and 97 WRC+. plus. Not ideal output from him, but from him, you're just looking for a cheap lefty home run, 3,900, 2,800 cross sites. First base eligible on both, outfield added on FanDuel. A very playable part who does have an 11.5% barrel and 47.1% hard hits over 160 this year. So he's not completely dead. It's just you're dealing with a lot of homer or bust kind of days. Less so from the other two guys. Joey Ortiz has been really good this season. Over 199 plate appearances, slashing 284, 379, 467, creating runs 42% better than average, striking out at just a 15.6% clip. Kid's been really good. Third base only on DraftKings for 37. Cheap for the output. 2,900 second base eligible also on FanDuel. Love it. 34.29 for Perkins is also fairly cheap for a guy who's created runs 7% better than average over 210 plate appearances. Not asked to do a ton, provides a little bit of counting stat upside from time to time, capable of getting on base, can steal you a bag, might hit you a cheap home run. Less of a priority. Between those three guys at the bottom, Ortiz is the best player probably. But any one of them, especially at the pricing at any of these positions, and it's a solid mix of positions on FanDuel, playable enough mix of positions on DraftKings for the money. It's not a bad set of options to have at the bottom of the lineup. So the Brewers are pretty stackable 1 through 9. It is, I guess I got to go Brewers on top because they're the higher projected run total. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go with the model here a little bit. Going to go with the gut here a little bit. Although the model's got technically the Blue Jays at the lower average projection. Shit. All right, fine. Brewers on top. Followed very closely behind by the Blue Jays bats. And then Jose Barrios mostly on DraftKings behind that. I don't really see the need to play Colin Ray on this slate. He doesn't project out crazy poorly. But again, he's been really low strikeout this year. He's got a propensity for giving up power. He doesn't really have great stuff. And this is a relatively low strikeout Blue Jays squad. So outside of just price and probably a pretty total lack of popularity, I really don't see all that many needs to go to Colin Ray outside of maybe a few just, dart throw, just pure price driven dart throws on DraftKings. Here's that Seth Lugo game you guys were clamoring for. Jake loves the Brewers stack today. Yeah, I like that. And yes, Ortiz was the primary return for the Brewers trade. I think I said that the last couple of times I've mentioned him, so I steered away from repeating that. Sometimes I try and not repeat the same phrase every single time. I know I do a lot of that, and I appreciate you guys tolerating it. Andy Melman's here, driving along the highway to the sonorous sounds of my voice. I can only imagine Andy's got the top down in his convertible, just hair blowing in the breeze, radio cranked to 11, and just blasting out this for all to hear, pulling up to stoplights, and people are like nodding along with the picks. Like, yeah. Pulling up their phones and like suddenly making a DraftKings lineup like, hey, who did he say to put in a pitcher? Andy shouting back across the way as he peels out and drives off. So Seth Lugo's pitching against the New York Yankees. He costs $9,700 on FanDuel. Maybe that's why I'm a little bit less comfortable with it. At 84, I won't at least quibble with the throw on DraftKings at 84. He's effectively priced in the mid-range. And he has been good. 2.13 ERA, but that's hiding a 3.92 xFIP. Just a 21.1% strikeout rate. Hovering around league average here, but he's been good at limiting walks, 5.6% walks, 9% swinging, 28.8% CSW, kind of in line with the output over here. Not tragic in terms of home run upside, 8.6% barrels. That's a little high, but this is okay. That's okay, but not really against these guys. That's where your problem lies. A lot of other teams, you might get away with that barrel rate. If he loses one of these Yankees, it's going to go into the seats. So you lose a little bit of downside there. Stuff Plus, he's slightly below average. This is a non-tragic rating by Stuff Plus, and that's again for the full arsenal. So we've seen a number of guys where actual specific pitches are above average, but they math out across the full arsenal to below. Let's take a look at Seth Lugo since we've got a moment. Dead on 100s by location plus and pitching plus, so right at league average for that. And again, 2 points below average for the full arsenal. But that includes 3 out of the 6 rated pitches that go from 104, 128, and 138. Slider, the cutter, and what is that? Changeup? No, that's his changeup. I forget what these abbreviations are a lot of the time. Well, regardless, whichever one. What's FC? Stuff plus FC. Splitter? Lugo. What's his actual other pitch? Jeez. You go over to Stuff Plus, or to Stuff Plus, to StatCast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They've got 8 graded pitches for him this year. That's insane. And he throws all of them. The pitch he's thrown the least is his sweeper. He's thrown that 52 times this year. 18.2% whiff rate. He's thrown his changeup 83 times, cutter 87, the slurve 122, the slider 132 times, and he's got a four-seamer, a sinker, and a pure curve. See, there's some issues in here, most especially with the four-seamer. It's got a 17.4% whiff rate, which is not good. Comes in at 92.4 miles an hour. He throws that against his sinker, right? It's just a combination of the two pitches. They're exact same velo. The sinker's been hit relatively hard, 449 actual slug against a 459 X slug. The four-seamer, 284 slug against a 502 X slug. 164 batting average against the 246 expected batting average. So right there's a little bit of hidden power maybe. Some of the other pitches not nearly as much, but like his changeup 353 slug versus a 644 X slug. And it's a changeup that he does use. He uses it mostly to lefties. But if Juan Soto's in the lineup, you're not throwing that pitch to Juan Soto. He'll destroy it. So I do think that as I usually say, this is certainly the more honest number. And that even might be just kind of overperforming who Lugo is. He's not terrible. He's been perfectly fine. He's been higher strikeout in the past, 23.2% strikeouts last year, 3.57 ERA with a 3.76 xFIP. Year before, 3.60 ERA with a 3.51 xFIP. This was pitching in relief, so we go a little bit more high effort in terms of the strikeout ability, the strike throwing ability. But he's always been a little bit prone to giving up some barrels. Not a lot of hard hits or exit velo there, but a ton of barrels, ton of hard hits and exit velo here. Just was okay at keeping the ball somewhat down. And that's where he wins against the home runs a little bit. It's not as dramatic as some of the other guys, but that's at least somewhat effective at keeping the ball in the yard. But again, you lose that to home run hitters like, that one. And that becomes a problem. 84 on DraftKings, no issue with it. 97 on FanDuel, pretty big issue with it. I can see the pretty big downside here. Not saying it couldn't succeed, but that's a pretty thin option against a board that looks like this with all these options at cheaper prices and then two just utterly elite options at the top of the board, and not a lot of daylight between Seth Lugo for 97 and Dylan Cease for 10-2. Find me that $500. I mean, that's easy enough to do, I think. Carlos Rodon going against the Royals lineup, 8,800, 9,400. Projects out better than Lugo. Middle of the board type of a projection for Rodon. 8,800 I think is very fair on DraftKings. 9,400, the only reason for any kind of hesitation is Casey's been a little bit decent this year. They're relatively low strikeout. And again, Rodon, I think pitching a little bit lucky. 3.08 ERA, but a 4.26 xFIP. 23.7% strikeout rate is decent, not crazy good. 12.5% swinging is excellent and should have a higher overall strikeout rate with that swinging strike rate. But the CSW is a little bit underperforming where it should be. Was similarly doing similar things for strike throwing last year to similarly low results, and everything else was bad last year, where he's been pretty decent, gotten a little bit lucky maybe in some of those spots this year. But it's really not this guy. We haven't seen this guy in a Yankee uniform. The guy who had a 33.4% strikeout rate, a 2.88 ERA, and a 2.91 xFIP the year before they signed him. That guy hasn't shown up. He had a 14.1% swinging strike rate, a 30.6% CSW. None of this is in line with that. It's a lot closer to this, which is really uncomfortable to say. But again, he is getting away with it. Stuff Plus still does like the arsenal by and large. A lot of barrels in here, a lot of hard hits, ton of exit velo on that launch angle though. Definitely could yield some home runs to the Royals lineup. So I do think Rodon's in play. I do think he's easily playable, but I'm not completely in love with the option. In his last start, which came against the Twins, he struck out 9. Pretty tremendous outing there. He gave up a homer, but just 2 earned runs on 3 hits. He's given up exactly 3 hits in exactly 6 innings in each of his last 3 starts. The other 2 were against the Angels at LA and against the Padres at San Diego. Struck out 5 against the Angels, struck out just 2 against the Pods. 6 strikeouts apiece against the White Sox and the Twins in the games before that. Just 2 earned runs and a single earned run. 6 innings in each of those games. He's gone into the 7th twice, but by and large, he's completed 6 innings in all of these starts. And we're hovering between 6 to 7 strikeout range, 5 to 7, whatever you want to call it. So again, good enough upside. But the Royals, this projected version of the lineup, just 19.6% strikeouts. Looks like we got the confirmed. I think it's roughly similar. This confirmed version of the Royals lineup, 20.3% strikeouts. Solid stretch of very good hitters at the top who limit strikeouts in pretty appealing ways. You get Nick Lofton in the heart of the lineup at just 12.5% in just 72 plate appearances, but was appreciably low last year in another 68. So not a huge sample, but 130 and change plate appearances tell me that Nick Lofton is somewhere around 18 probably percent strikeout rate over time. Couple of targets among the free swingers, but you don't have MJ in the lineup today, so you're taking that down a little bit. Hunter Renfroe, for as bad as he's been, hasn't been striking out. Darren Blanco, if he gets on base, he's running. Does strike out a little bit, and then Garrett Hampson just isn't very good and strikes out a lot. Oh, wow. 321, 369, 385. Creating runs 15% better than average. Go you, Garrett Hampson. He's all right last year, over 253. Pretty bad this year, outside of the 12 steals. I'll issue a partial apology to the estate of Garrett Hampson. Maybe he's not pretty bad. Maybe he just needed a chance to be average. Top of the Royals lineup is definitely interesting. I tried to trade for this guy yesterday. Didn't pull it off. He's re-signable. I think he's an asset for stolen base upside and season long. Love the way he puts bat on ball, 45.6% hard hit rate this season. 256, 305, 381, 92 WRC plus, just a 126 ISO. There's still a lot of growing to do as a hitter overall in terms of actual output, actual results. But I think I'll take this as a decent point to have a young hitter at. There's a lot that can be built on this foundation, and for DFS purposes, get him on base, steal a bag, score a run off of a Bobby Witt homer, a Sal Perez homer. One of those two guys comes through for you. It's a very nice little building block for a fair price. $49.33 is not that expensive. Third base eligible on both sides. Bobby Witt, superstar at shortstop, 320, 371, 556, 237 ISO, 11 homers, 19 steals. Nothing to dislike about Bobby Witt whatsoever. 16.5% barrels this year, 51.4% hard hits. Just growth across the board. Sal Perez, 10 home runs on the season, 192 ISO. Cooled off a little bit over the last couple of weeks. Was off to just a absolute tear of a start. And has come back to earth a little bit. But we've seen Sal have monster years in the past, and he's a tremendous hitter of a catcher. He's still at 299, 372, 491, a 139 WRC plus, 10 home runs, tremendous contact profile, 54.32. I think the price is down a couple of bucks on both sites, so absolutely a great spot to take advantage. Grab Sal against the lefty and hope for some home run upside. You can see 9.54 in the home run model to lead the team. Power likes him a little bit. Bobby Witt, 9.38, second best option. Not far behind, Nelson Velasquez, 8.49 in the home run model. He's got a 10.6% barrel rate, 8 home runs in 198 plate appearances. Just a 190 ISO, but that's, I mean, I shouldn't say just. He's got a 190 ISO. That could be higher if he had any kind of more consistency. Last year, tremendous home run output in a limited number of plate appearances and dramatically good premium contact. Probably upside, not necessarily back to here on a sustained level, but beyond this, maybe to like this kind of territory. I think there's more power upside for Nelson Velasquez over the long term. Lofton, 3,000, 2,400, 3 positions on FanDuel, 283, 366, 300 over 72 plate appearances, just 94 WRC plus, no hard hits, no barrels at all, very few hard hits to speak of, but not striking out a lot, walks a decent amount, capable of getting involved as a correlated scoring option. Freddie Fermin, second catcher in the lineup, positionally blocked with Sal. Obviously, you don't want Fermin over Sal all that frequently, but he's a capable enough bat. If you have to go there instead for a $2,000 discount from Sal, you're not completely shooting yourself in the foot power-wise. He's got 1 home run on the season, 292, 342, 377 over 114 plate appearances. Capable enough. Last year, 9.9% barrels, 42.7% hard hits, with 9 home runs in 235 plate appearances. Also slashed a pretty effective 281, 321, 461. Creator runs 8% better than average. So Freddie Fermin, not a dead spot in the lineup. Hunter Renfroe has been kind of a dead spot in the lineup. 20% worse than average for run creation. He's pulled his way back over the Mendoza line at 201, but just a 274 on base. 6 home runs, not really doing what they're paying him to do, which is hit home runs. Blanco, again, 13 stolen bases in just 64 plate appearances is pretty tremendous. Getting on at a 323 clip. If you can see more opportunities and continue getting on base even at this level, that's going to be a very good stolen base total at the end of the year. It's just a matter of opportunity and being able to actually get on base. He's not much of a hitter, but he's got a little bit of ability and just put the ball in play with his speed, you can gain base hits. And then there's Hampson, 4 positions on FanDuel, 2 on DraftKings. Yankees lineup, really, there's a big swing on whether or not we get Soto. If he's in the lineup, obviously there's a little bit of an uptick. Still not out. So if he's in there, puts a third guy in the lineup above the magic number for home runs, Soto, Judge, and Stanton. Judge has 24 home runs on the season now. He had 4 home runs exactly a month ago. Pretty phenomenal 30 days for Aaron Judge. I actually put it in the Discord. If you extrapolated Aaron Judge's last 30 games, this is per at MLB metrics on Twitter. If you extrapolated Judge's last 30 games to a full season of 162 games, it would be a pace of 232 hits, 184 runs, 205 RBIs, and 92 home runs. He would slash 413, 534, 1.048 slug with a 1.582 OPS. Just a phenomenal bonkers kind of a run that Judge has been on. It's going to cool off at some point. I mean, he is very good. He is, around these numbers good, but he's not going to sustain the ridiculous tear that he's been on over the last 30 days. 29% barrels, 62.7% hard hits for the season. Tremendous output. Right in line with what he's done the last couple of seasons, though. Nothing about this is crazy unique. It's just a collection of all of it happening in these 30 days is kind of bonkers. But stretched out over the season, there's no reason to believe that the contact profile won't stay there. Some of the luck will come and go. Some of the fly ball trajectory will come and go. But clearly a monster for 6,500, 4,800 against a pitcher who, again, does have a tendency to yield some barrels and some hard hits. Soto for 6,244 is the best pairing in the world with Aaron Judge. Love the combination. Anthony Volpe, 342 on base, 6 home runs, 12 steals. Doing good things in the leadoff spot. Just needs to get on base in front of the other two. Tremendous correlated scoring option for a very fair price at shortstop. Alex Verdugo, especially if he's back in the 4 spot, becomes interesting just with Judge and Soto's ability to, if they're not homering, to get on base. 424 on base for Soto, 436 for Judgy is kind of insane with everything else those guys do. So it benefits Alex Verdugo tremendously as a correlated scoring option who's just here to, kind of hit the ball a little bit hard from the left side of the plate. Not really in terms of like hard hit rate barrels. That's just decidedly average. But he's got the ability to hit line drives, double, bring these guys around, put the ball in play, I guess is the word I'm searching for, and bring these guys around. Very low strikeout. Capable of drawing a walk and getting involved too. Giancarlo Stanton is too cheap at 4,800, 3,200. This is a 5,000 plus player on DraftKings. I don't care that he's hitting 224 with a 279 on base. I don't care what his WOBA is or any of that with Giancarlo Stanton. I care about the 15 home runs, the 242 ISO, the 18.4% barrels, 52.4% hard hits. I just care that he is making contact from time to time and that ball travel when he make contact. Gleyber Torres, 42-26, 5 home runs, 4 steals, 107 ISO, 88 WRC plus. Really just bouncing along the bottom this season. Couple signs of life here and there, but really hasn't strung together more than a couple of, 1 or 2 good games in a row before things go back and kind of revert. So it's been a rough stretch for Gleyber. I still like the talent, still like the positioning at second base. Certainly better than DJ LeMahieu, Ozzy Cabrera down toward the bottom of the lineup, but not by much so far this year. Austin Wells, 3,200, 2,400. Love the catcher bat. Dead on the Mendoza line, 289 on base, 72 WRC plus, 1 home run, 1 steal. He is a better hitter than this. I do think over time this comes around. Still pretty low strikeout, high walk. And based on last year, there is premium contact ability. So cheap lefty catcher power is always interesting to me. DJ, 33-23. Pretty ineffective over the last couple seasons. Pretty ineffective first 39 plate appearances this year. Cheap, capable of putting bat on ball, though. Hard hits have never really gone away. So we can kind of look to that, but just a correlated scoring option at the bottom of the lineup. Ozzy Cabrera, if he's in the lineup today, only moderately playable. Miscast at third base on DraftKings for the price is fine, but the positioning is bad. I wouldn't want him at third. Shortstop, outfield, second base, maybe on FanDuel 2,700. A lot of options at those positions, though. This is not much of a hitter. He does have 5 home runs and 176 plate appearances, but everything cooled back off and normalized pretty quickly for Oswaldo Cabrera after a good first 2 weeks of the year. So, Yankees bats. Yankees bats, Carlos Rodon. Royals bats, Seth Lugo. Kind of undecided between Carlos Rodon and the Royals bats, though. There's a little bit of quality there. But I think that's how I would have it. White Sox and the Mariners. Interesting one lined up here. Jake Swales, Bobby Witt one-off could break the slate if you got the money for it, for sure. So Eric Fede, again, hasn't been bad. 3.27 ERA, a 3.52 xFIP. It's kind of believable there. 7.1% walks, a 1.18 whip. Not doing bad in that department. 6.5% barrels, 36% hard hits is tremendous. 88.1 miles an hour of exit velo. So when he's not missing bats, he's inducing weak contact. He's doing it on a relatively tame 10.1 degree average launch. It's yielded just 2.57% home runs. Stuff Plus doesn't love the arsenal. It's 4 and change points, 4.5 points below average, but it's not egregiously bad. It's within range to have a couple effective pitches, and he's making it work. Again, 23.5% strikeouts. He's also thrown 74 and a third over 13 starts, so he's pitching effectively, relatively deep into some of these games. Solid stretch of 6+ outside of 2 starts along the way in the middle of this season so far. And then the last 2 starts, he's only gone 5 in each of those because he's given up a few runs. Also had healthy strikeout totals in both of them, so just a lot of pitches. Last time out at Wrigley last week, 5 innings, gave up 3 earned runs on 6 hits, but struck out 7. For where he's typically priced, that's not bad. At 8,600 on FanDuel, that probably doesn't get you there. The runs hurt, the 7 strikeouts are good, but the 5 innings, he didn't get a win, he didn't get a quality start. So that hurts you on FanDuel. At the DraftKings price, it's a little bit closer. You would want the win bonus in there, obviously. And that's one thing the White Sox are really limited at, is being able to give them those win bonuses. So just know that you're probably a little bit taxed for that upside. Game before that was 5 innings at the Brewers, gave up 4 earned runs on 9 hits, struck out 8 but walked 4, also not a good DFS start. 6 1/3 clean innings, just 3 hits against the Orioles, 6 strikeouts, 3 walks. Take that game. No win, but I'll still take that game. 6 innings against Toronto at Toronto, struck out just 2, walked 1, a home run, 5 earned on 7 hits. A lot of less than ideal starts in here, but a couple effective ones. 6 strikeout games a few times, had the 7 and the 8 the last 2. Had a 9 strikeout game over 8 1/3, gave up just 2 earned runs, gave up a homer on 7 hits. That was against Tampa Bay back at the end of April. Had an 11 strikeout game the game before that. So, I mean, there is clear upside here, and the Mariners have been crazy targetable all season. 26.2% strikeout rate for this projected version of the Mariners lineup. Only a couple of guys who have been even slightly above average for run creation this year. A lot of underperformances. Seems like we can go back to the well here with some White Sox pitchers. And I tell you what, I'm doing that on both sides of this series to start the week in the Dynasty League. Tomorrow we'll be talking at great length about Drew Thorpe, the rookie who's come up and hopefully will be on both sites tomorrow, knock on wood. One of the top pitching prospects in the game coming up to pitch against the Mariners tomorrow. And then the Mariners have Brian Wu is going in one of them. Bryce Miller's going in another one. And then I've got Garrett Crochet on the Dynasty team. So 4 starts in the next 3 days from my Dynasty League team come from this series. So suffice to say, I like pitching on both sides of this one. Logan Gilbert, 9,800, 10-8. By the way, Fede is not one of those guys, and neither is Logan Gilbert, though I would love to have Logan Gilbert. 9,800, 10-8. I think he's effectively priced on both sides. Projects out fairly as one of the top 2 pitchers on the board. 3.12 ERA with a 3.57 xFIP on the season, 23.6% strikeout rate, fairly manageable walk rate at just 6.2, a sub-1 whip. He is the definition of what the Mariners want out of their pitchers. He's been tremendous. 12.9% swinging strike rate, can punch his way out of any trouble he gets into, pitches deep into games, 83 2/3 in his 13 starts. He's on a solid stretch of 5 straight starts where he's gone at least 6, went into the 7th twice. Just a 4-inning clunker against the Twins at Minnesota in the middle of the season on May 9th. 4 innings, 8 earned runs was a meltdown. 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, gave up a home run. Outside of that, he's pitched at least into the 6th inning in every other start this year. The shortest start other than that 4-inning game was a 5 2/3 on April 5th, second start of the season at Milwaukee. Struck out 7, but gave up 3 home runs, oddly. And 4 total runs on 5 hits. Every other game, he's gone at least 6. Most of them he's pitched into the 7th. Tremendous option for depth going up against the worst lineup in baseball. Bonus strikeout upside based on pitching an additional inning more than a lot of guys do. So just tremendous option from the top of the board today. No issues with Logan Gilbert on either site. It's just a decision between these two. As far as who rivals Logan Gilbert today. And then you're, of course, dealing with price and popularity adjustments and all of that. But just pure scoring upside, it's Gilbert and Cease. I don't think you need to really book a gigantic White Sox position as a hedge in any way. Gilbert is easily talented enough to just take your shares and run with them. They're going to be low owned. They're going to be contrarian as hell for good reason. They're not a good lineup, and he is a very good pitcher. If you decide to go to the White Sox for whatever your reasons are, top priority bat is obviously Luis Robert Jr. 5,200, 3,200, pretty cheap. He's got 4 home runs in his 50 plate appearances, a 292 ISO. 2 of those home runs have come since coming back to the lineup, making killer contact in a very, very small sample, but has always just been an absolute star. A lot of home run upside, some stolen base upside. Love the player, hate the lineup. Corey Julks in the leadoff spot is arguably priority number 2 based on 365 on base over 74 plate appearances. 2 homers, 3 steals, creating runs 39% better than average in the teeny tiny sample. But he's very cheap. It's a good spot in the lineup if you have to go to this team. Nicky Lopez, capable of putting the ball in play, but really limited in terms of the results. 239, 298, 273 triple slash, a .034 ISO, 2 stolen bases, just a 67 for run creation. Certainly no Luis Arraez at the top of the lineup. Gavin Sheets for 34-28 has 7 home runs from the left side. Andrew Vaughn has 6 home runs from the right side. Sheets has been way better, creating runs 25% better than average based on a 349 on base percentage. Neither one of those guys is all that good, but they're both moderately playable. Between the two, I would rather have Sheets more often than not, especially lefty bat, get him in there against the righty. But again, Gilbert, very good. Not a great matchup for this team. Paul DeJong, 12 home runs to lead the team over 209 plate appearances, 244 ISO. Definitely got his power back this season. It's not that crazy that he's got a decent home run total and that he's been hitting for power. Just strikes out a ton, doesn't do a whole heck of a lot else. But the home runs are okay. If you're going to this team, it's not a terrible option. I just kind of wish he played a different position than shortstop, because by and large, I'm getting shortstops in other spots. I'm taking the Bobby Witts. I'm taking the better shortstop options. Oscar Colas, Corey Lee, Lennon Sosa, really only if you're getting desperate and clicking things together in a bunch of White Sox stacks do you go to these options. Toward the bottom of the worst lineup in baseball, it's really not where you find DFS success. That said, 5 home runs, 4 stolen bases for Corey Lee is at least okay cheap catcher output. It's just you'd rather have those opportunities come from up here than down here, and not a lot of opportunity for this team to go around 4 or 5 times. On the other side, there's a little bit more hope for upside, I think. It's a slightly better in terms of the average home run mark. 6.3 for the full lineup versus 5.25 on the other side. Both teams just one guy above the magic number. You get Cal Raleigh from the Mariners lineup. You get Luis Robert over it on the other side. But a few more guys doing a little bit better in this one. Julio just at 7.22, but obviously believable power upside against anybody. Rounding slowly back into form. He's up to 98 WRC+. He's got 14 steals, just 5 homers, but 269, 318, 348. We're gradually coming around. Premium contact coming around. Still a long way to go, but 3,400, 5,000. You're getting a pretty effective discount on a lot of talent there. Put him together with Cal Raleigh in the heart of the lineup for all their home run upside. J.P. Crawford at the top spot, up to 308, but really underperforming this season so far. 107 WRC+. He's gotten that in gear a little bit. 6 home runs on the season. What's his... Curious what his output was over the last couple of weeks.
Over the last 19 games, going back to May 20th. Oh, let's give him May 20th as well. I missed that one. So since the 20th of May, he had been out from the 23rd to the 20th. 256, 322, 500, creating runs 35% better than average. 9.2% walks against, 21.8% strikeouts, a 244 ISO, 4 home runs, stole a base. So Crawford's right over the last, 20 days, has rounded nicely back into form. So I think we're playing Crawford here. It's just a little bit ugly still in the season-long triple slash, but coming around a little bit just like Julio. Josh Rojas has been fine, 270, 335, 397. Playable part, multi-position eligible on FanDuel, not so on DraftKings. That's not ideal on DraftKings, having him at third base. Rather, I'm at second over here. I thought that said 3,800 for a sec. Raleigh, tremendous catcher power. Just buying that contact profile, honestly, for 4,200 has its value on the DraftKings slate. Is definitely capable of putting a couple zeros in your lineup, though. 34.1% strikeout rate on the season. 206, 289, 392. Kind of a homer or bust option, but good position to do that in. Luke Raley at 35-27 has 6 home runs and 5 steals. Pretty effective bat, 114 WRC+. Don't mind him. Probably like third highest priority bat, maybe fourth, like 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. Mitch Garver, if he's in, second catcher, 3,328, obviously positionally blocked on DraftKings. You can play him and Raleigh as a catcher and a first base, catcher util rather kind of option. But another unreliable kind of homer or bust type option with a lot of strikeouts. He's hit 7 in 214 plate appearances this year. Sub Mendoza, 290 on base, 89 WRC+. Dylan Moore, effective enough for power, 6 home runs. He's stolen 9 bases, 195 ISO, 115 WRC+, over 203. It's been pretty good. 9% barrels, 43.4% hard hits.
Price is still pretty cheap. He's got second base eligibility on DraftKings, which is nice because you don't really want him at third. 4-position eligibility for $2,900 on FanDuel. He's cheap enough, playable. Dominic Canzone, a lot of hard hit balls. 9.1% barrels, 45.5% hard hits in the small sample this year. 89 plate appearances. Way below the Mendoza line. Way below an acceptable on base percentage. Does have 5 home runs in 89 plate appearances. Does have a 213 ISO. Home run or bust from Dominic Canzone. And then Ryan Bliss, I mentioned him before. A lot of speed upside. He's stolen 3 bases in just 28 plate appearances. If you get him on, he's going. And he does have a fairly well-regarded hit tool with a little bit of underappreciated power because he's a tiny guy. He's like 5'6", but he can generate power. I don't want to use the name Jose Altuve in the combination because that's absurd. But, just in terms of size, ability to generate power, he's got a little bit of that in him. We'll see what he does. I'd love to have him like up here in the lineup. So overall, Logan Gilbert, top spot. I'm going to give the second spot to Eric Fede. I really think there's enough value there. 78.86. Wish he was a little bit cheaper on FanDuel, but easily playable against a team we've won targeting all season long. And then Mariners bats above the White Sox bats if you have to go to bats in this one. Yeah, just looking at the comment in the chat, Alan S. Fede road numbers are rough. Results-wise, yes. He's got a on the road, and home road isn't really something I look at all that often. But yeah, he's given up in 36 and a third on the road. He's given up 23 earned runs compared to the 4 earned runs that he's given up in 38 innings at home. He's given up 5 home runs on the road versus 3 at home. But it's a 5.70 ERA versus a 0.95 ERA. Certainly on talent, we know that he's a closer pitcher to the 5 number. But if we're looking at xFIP, the home xFIP is 333, which is significantly higher than the sub 1 ERA he's put up. But the road xFIP is just 3.71, so it's not far off the home xFIP, and it's not far. I mean, it is a significant gap from the ERA. So some bad luck, some happenstance baked in there against, for sure, a couple additional home runs baked into that ERA for sure. His actual FIP number, not the expected number, is 4.22, so there's an appreciable gap there as well. So I think while he has been worse on the road, to your point, some of it is not entirely his fault. Some of it is, some of it isn't. But yeah, he's playable. Yeah, Mamba, that's the exact reason, though. Targeting Seattle has been profitable and probably is going to continue to be. And he's got just enough strikeout upside to make it interesting. But wouldn't shock me if he had a good day. Wouldn't shock me if he got completely torched. So that's a firm both sideser. This one, a lot less so. Dylan Cease, pretty damn good looking on this one. 3.51 ERA, a 3.27 xFIP, actually underperforming a little bit in the runs allowed department. It's the only spot we can really nitpick. 10.1% barrels, maybe we can nitpick that a little bit for a guy who's given up a 17.1 degree average launch, kind of a fly ball oriented pitcher, but just 33.7% hard hits. Very, very good at limiting the ability to square the ball up. 88.7 miles an hour of exit velo, 2.62% home run rate. Obviously way, way above average by Stuff Plus metrics for the full arsenal, striking out 30.5% on a 14.8% swinging strike rate. Dylan Cease is absolutely tremendous, and he's got one of the top matchups in baseball. 26.7% strikeout rate for the projected version of the A's. Do we have the actual? Doesn't look like we've got the actual just yet. So there are clearly a lot of strikeouts, and it's really, regardless of what the A's do with this lineup, it's going to be a lot of strikeouts there for Dylan Cease. If you can afford him, he's easily the top projected pitcher on the slate. This is one of the highest pitching projections we've had all season. Again, it's not the Rockies. I think the A's are a little bit better than the Rockies than the White Sox. I haven't looked at the comparable, overall numbers, but just man for man is a little bit better of a lineup than those, but not by much. And Cease is a notable exception on this slate as in terms of being a strikeout pitcher. So any threat from the lineup compared to the White Sox or the Rockies, I think he just completely overcomes with his ability. That said, he has been a little bit rough in some spots for earned runs this year. He hasn't given up more than 5 earned, but he's given up 5 twice, and he's on a stretch of 5 starts in a row in which he's given up at least 3 earned runs. Does have strikeout appeal to cover it, and again, that's against some of the better lineups in baseball. The Royals, he gave up 3. The Yankees, he gave up 4. And at Atlanta against the Braves in his worst start of the year, he gave up 5. Struck out 5, but gave up 2 home runs, 9 hits in just 4 innings. But the upside dramatically, in my opinion, outweighs any kind of downside. Even if he gives up a couple of runs on a slate that is shaped like this, unless you get an ideal day out of Gilbert, Cease can give up a couple of runs at these prices and survive it based on these guys. It's not your deepest pool of pitchers that can spike the tremendous upside game. On the other side of this one, Joey Estes at 6,800, 7,600. I think he has been effective enough that if you want a cheapo dart against the Padres, it's not completely crazy. 4.67 ERA, but a 4.32 xFIP is a little bit more appealing. Just a 0.96 whip on an 11.5% swinging strike rate with 23.4% strikeouts and 5.6% walks. That is not a bad whip. He's been effective at limiting free passes and keeping guys off the bases in general. It's just you're dealing with a pretty high-end fly ball trajectory, 9.3% barrels in this small sample, 44% hard hits, 90 miles an hour of exit velo. Means this is very lucky to be limited to this. Stuff Plus is a little above average. We're just kind of talking about maybe some cheapo $6,800 SP2 dart throw upside. At 76 on FanDuel, I'm a little bit less convinced that there's any upside here. For one, you're dealing with a very low strikeout Padres squad. Even if we ignore the 5.8% strikeout rate from Luis Ariz at the top, which we can't because he's there, the rest of this lineup is still just 16.4%. So it's a very low strikeout bunch. There's a lot of balls in play. Their run creation ability is kind of on point, rounded into form for this group of hitters. But there are some small samples in there. There are some underwhelming performances in here. It's in no way a safe matchup. I think he can get through it and give you like a high 20s FanDuel with no bonus, mid-teens DraftKings with a questionable bonus, with probably no real great shot at the win bonus over there. So it's that kind of a dart. Padres bats way over the Athletics bats if you're deciding between the two teams. For one, they've got a couple legitimate stars, or I guess they're down to 2. Luis Ariz, legitimate star in terms of his hit tool and what he does in his approach to the game. Not the ideal version of a modern player necessarily, but he's tremendous. 331, 369, 396. One of the best correlated scoring plays in the game and only costs 4,600, 3,100. First base, not great on DraftKings. Still get second base eligibility on him on FanDuel, which is where I like to play him. Fernando Tatis, 14.2% barrels, 53.1% hard hits this season. 304 plate appearances. I think that's our first guy above 300 plate appearances for the year. 281, 359, 467, a 142 WRC plus. Pretty phenomenal option with more room for extended output beyond what he's even done so far this year. Arguably underperforming slightly that premium contact and what he's done in the past. So tremendous option. He's still cheap at 5,500. Cheap is the wrong word, but he's still a little underpriced for who he is at 55 on DraftKings, back to 4,000 on FanDuel. Jerks and Profar starting to get Izzy an MVP conversation around the baseball buzz sphere. 277 plate appearances, been tremendous. 325, 425, 04, creating runs 70% better than average. 10 home runs, 4 stolen bases, finally fulfilling his promise from more than a decade ago. Cronenworth, 4,300 at second base on DraftKings. Very playable. 3,200 first and second on FanDuel. We're starting to cool off, normalize a little bit. 262, 325, 444. Still 23% better than average for run creation. Still 9% barrels is it's certainly double last year's barrel rate. 9 home runs. He's a playable part at worst, but we're back more toward the Cronenworth that I was kind of expecting this season. Donovan Solano, 3,000, both corner infield spots on DraftKings. Gets a little bump for value at second base on FanDuel for 2,500. 314, 380, 400. Capable triple slash, capable line drive hitter, hit tool type of a player. Does have one home run this season, 132 WRC plus in 79 opportunities. David Peralta, if you get him in the lineup, 27, 24. Playable lefty bat for cheap against a middle of the road type of variety. That's really all he is at this point, is just a playable mix and match part. He's been 5% better than average in the small sample for run creation. Jackson Merrill I'd probably rather have than David Peralta at this point. 44.3% hard hits over 232 plate appearances. Pretty solid triple slash for the rookie. 9 stolen bases, 3 home runs. Not bad. 9 homers, 13 steals out of Ha-Seong Kim. Despite the dip in batting average, everything else has been tremendous this year from Kim. So happy to go to him, and if people are skipping him down lineup, I'll scoop up those shares. 4,000 on DraftKings, perfectly effective price. 3,200 on FanDuel. I wish he was hitting higher in the lineup, but I don't really care with him being that cheap and with the counting stat upside. The run creation mark is 12% above average. He's just not hitting for batting average right now, but that can change pretty quickly too. Campusano, mix and match catcher from the last spot. If you go to the A's, Abraham Toro has been effective enough. 269, 312, 396, creating runs 6% better than average. He's got 3 steals, got 5 home runs on the year. 54 plate appearances out of Miguel Andujar. He's hit 2 home runs, a 170 ISO. He's created runs 19% better than average. Had to go find it the other day. We went all the way back to 2018, but he did have that 26 home run year in 2018 for the Yankees, and then just never had a full-time job again. Playable part if he's hitting second in the lineup. JJ Bleday, 9 home runs from the left side. He's got a 216 ISO. Again, it's very difficult to hit home runs against Dylan Cease. It's very difficult to square Dylan Cease up at all to not strike out against him. But Bleday is fairly low strikeout, especially for this lineup. Andujar has been low strikeout so far this year, was in a small sample last year. Toro, not the worst for strikeouts, but he's improved by about 5 points so far this year. So Bleday not necessarily completely out of his depth here in terms of the strikeout downside, but his irregularity, I don't love him as a DFS option. This is where it starts to get a little thin around some of these whiff rate types, some of the heavier strikeout types like the next guy up, Brent Rooker. 13 home runs on the season at 270 ISO, 270, 356, 541 slash line, 16.4% barrels, 50.8% hard hits. I've come full circle on Brent Rooker, I got to say. I pulled off a successful trade for Brent Rooker in the Dynasty League this year, just this weekend. He was a $1 expiring contract in the Dynasty League, so it's a very low-risk move. I traded a 15th round pick next year for him. So very low risk, high reward. It's an OPS league, so I needed a little bit of on base, and he's been effective at that this season, and I needed some home runs. So that's how you land on Brent Rooker for $1. So cue the tremendous downside the rest of the way, or the injury, or whatever's going to burn me with that move now that I've acquired Brent Rooker, who I've done nothing but bash for the last season. But lots of power upside, 8.87 in the home run model, 7.92 for Shea Langoliers. He makes tons of premium contact as well. He is dramatically underperforming or underwhelming, I guess, in terms of the front end of the triple slash. 197, 258 is nobody's idea of quality, but a home run or bust catcher for sure. 12 on the season at 249 ISO, 98 WRC plus. I feel like I've said that about a lot of our catchers today too. They're either like mix and match, not ideal types, or they're home run or bust types. So just all the more reason to, a Langoliers dart here or there if you're building A stacks, definitely in play. It's just not the day to be building many A stacks. Outside of being totally contrarian about it, it's really not a good spot. Seth Brown, 5 home runs this year, a 117 ISO, 65 WRC plus. He's a better player than these 176 plate appearances. Lefty bat with a history of premium contact, some home run output, even some stolen base output. I expect his next 150 and change plate appearances to be better than 190, 250, 307. That's a really bad stretch for Seth Brown. Again, better player than that. Tyler Soderstrom, 12.5% barrels, 43.8% hard hits, and a tiny sample of batted balls over 68 plate appearances. Very cheap option at first base on DraftKings. Same position on FanDuel. A little bit of lefty ability there. They're expecting the kid to be able to hit. They're expecting him to be able to hit for power. They're not expecting him to be able to catch a ball when it gets popped up and he gets tackled by a relief pitcher behind home plate. Not sure if anybody saw that replay yesterday, but that was just silly. Yusei Kikuchi, his claim is that he forgot that there was no railing there. I don't know why he would have gone barreling toward the railing and expected it to just stop him from running into the player, but that's what he said. Anyway, weird play behind home plate yesterday. Zach Geloff, underwhelming so far, over 191 this year, was very good last year. Truth is probably somewhere in between. He's a playable option at second base. I just wish he was higher up in the lineup. And then Max Schumann, interesting one about him, actually. He was the first player since, at least if I'm remembering correctly, 1906 to debut and play 5 different positions in his first 5 games. So he's got that going for him. 3 positions eligible on FanDuel. DraftKings saw fit to just keep him as only a shortstop, despite playing 5 different spots. Oh, was that not? That wasn't Schumann. Who the hell was I just thinking of? Because Schumann's made 147 plate appearances. Who was I thinking of? Somebody with a similar name. Now I gotta look that up. Who am I talking about, gang? There's somebody else with a similar name to Schumann. He's not on the A's, I don't think. I got mixed up between him and somebody else. Either way, if you're going here, Schumann, a mix and match part from the bottom. The hell was that? That's going to bother me now. I got to see if I can find that tweet. Just Dominguez, no. Aaron Judge, no. I don't know if I liked it from... it must have been on the other handle. Oh, well. It's going to bother me now. Be patient while I look through this. The hell was it? Who's got a name like Max Schneemann? That's all I need to find. It's just really bothering me that I just went on that little tear and that I actually remembered the stat, and I think I got it right, but it wasn't about the right player. These are from too long ago. I must not have hit the like button on it. See, this is why you should always like your tweets that you see. When you see stuff pop up from the @rotoscouts Twitter handle that you guys all better be following by now, make sure you like them so you can find them again, because I cannot find this one. Well, somebody out there in the world did that, and it's pretty damn cool. Is it on the White Sox? The hell am I thinking of? It's going to piss me off now. I'll find it and I'll put it in the Discord later on. No, it wasn't Shanuel. Schneemann. There it is. Inside foot, outside foot. Nailed it. Soccer fan. Schneemann from Cleveland. Thank you. Schneemann sounds like Schumann. Can I get a little agreement at least on that? Yeah, it was that guy. He started in like center, left, and right, and then 2 infield positions over the first 5 games. Well done, inside foot, outside foot. Somebody give that man a cigar. He won the trivia contest today. Or that person, that fella, that man, woman, child, whatever inside foot, outside foot wants to be. All right, so we're going, if we have to pick a team here, we're going Dylan Cease way up top pitcher on the entire slate, biggest projection, well worth paying for in this matchup. Padres bats way above the A's bats. Joey Estes may be sliding in there for some like really cheap darts. I don't think it looks as good as like Seth Lugo darts though, right? So it's not really a great spot to play it. And then A's bats only in the most shockingly contrarian sense over a bunch of lineups. Last game up, the Astros, the Giants. Doesn't look like we've got these lineups either. Let's see, going back to the Mariners. Oh, I forgot to mention him because he wasn't in that stupid projected lineup that I was looking at, but he is in the real lineup. Tyler Locklear making his debut. And, of course, the kid I picked up not in the lineup today, so that's great. Thanks, Seattle. Tyler Locklear, power hitting prospect for Seattle. Their top prospect got called up yesterday in the lineup today at first base. Not sure if he's on either site. We can go back for that for a minute. Yeah, so no Ryan Bliss. It's a pain in the ass for me. Actually, I'm just gonna. I wonder what happens if I only put him in. I think I need somebody in the first spot to trigger it. So Locklear is on the FanDuel slate, it looks like, at the dead min. That's kind of interesting. Doesn't look like he made it onto DraftKings. It's kind of a surprise. It's usually the other way around. 5.28 for Locklear in the home run model. Apologies for the sloppy look, but I just wanted to get him on the board real quick. So definitely another playable bat in this Mariners lineup if you're going to them. Makes them kind of interesting having him at the dead min. He's a third baseman on FanDuel as well. Not a bad option to have in there. He's up because Ty France is hurt. Rest of that lineup that I'm not going to bother to put in Crawford, Rojas, Rodriguez, Raleigh, Mitch Haniger, Luke Raley, Locklear, Kenzone, and more. So no Garver. Mitch Haniger, Mitch Garver, basically swappable parts at this point. Everything else basically the same. But Locklear's interesting in there. Anyway, accelerating back to the last game of the slate. Spencer Arrighetti, 6,500, 8,200, dramatically differently prices on site to site. Easily playable on DraftKings. That's like a mistake low kind of a price. I think he's been better than this in this ballpark against this lineup. 82 on FanDuel, like if you put him in that range, it's like, just call it 75 on DraftKings is probably about right. 72 even would be a little bit better. Dude's got a 25.6% strikeout rate over 46 2/3 in 10 starts. Yeah, he's walked 12.1%. That's problematic. 1.67 whip is not good at all. That's how you get to a 5.79 ERA. But under that, he's got a 4.10 xFIP. Hasn't really been bad in terms of giving up any kind of power, really. 12% swinging strikes is definitely intriguing against a lineup that's got some strikeouts in it. 28.9% CSW. All right, that's where some of the walks came from. He needs to get a little better at throwing some cold strikes. But he's off to a good... There's at least... I was going to say he's off to a good start. I'll give him, instead of that, there's a good foundation here. Stuff Plus doesn't really like the arsenal, right? He's made it work in these 10 starts. So we might just be giving a little bit of credit for that. But based on the fact that it is currently working, that the predictive numbers like him a little bit better than what his performance has been, I think there's some reason to believe against a lineup with a 22.2% strikeout rate across the projected and the same group of hitters at 25.5% last season. There's reason to believe, especially for this price. So that's a pretty interesting cheapo SP2 dart to throw. At 82 on FanDuel, I don't think it's completely out of the question. It's just I'd rather play a cheaper Chris Paddock against Colorado. Everybody and their brother who's playing this slate would rather play Chris Paddock against Colorado. You're going to get a massive popularity difference between the two. But that $400 discount is kind of important bet building. If you don't need the $400, going to Arrighetti is not a terrible option. Out projecting Kyle Harrison on both sides right now. And Harrison is easily the more talented of these two pitchers. Right now, though, at least over the first 13 starts of this season, Kyle Harrison has underperformed. 21.2% strikeouts. It's good. It's a league average-ish. Just a 4.18 ERA, 4.24 xFIP. There's no real daylight between these two numbers, but that's a little higher than they were expecting. It's not bad for a kid making his 13 starts this year, 7 last year, his first 20 starts of his career. Last year, 4.15 ERA with a 5.02 xFIP. A few more strikeouts available last year, but not really a difference between the swinging strike rate. It's exactly the same. The CSW is actually down this year, despite walks being about the same. So we've lost a few called strikes, maybe the victim of some bad calls, some borderline stuff, some lack of swings out of the zone, but just hasn't been great. 10.7% barrels is not ideal contact. 44.2% hard hits, and 90.4 miles an hour of exit velo on a 14.9 degree average launch angle doesn't really play well against this Astros team. Just a 2.93% home run rate, not on that kind of contact, not for long. You keep doing this, I guarantee you this is going to be above 4 in an awful hurry. 90.71 stuff, underperforming stuff plus as well. Was expecting more from Mr. Harrison. 84 on FanDuel, 74 on DraftKings. I think this is moderately playable, but I'd prefer the cheaper option over there. I'd prefer several of the other guys. All right, basically anybody up here or cheaper Arrighetti on the other side of this game. I'd probably honestly prefer Colin Ray against Toronto for just 62. Give me the $1,200 discount. I'll try and win it with bats between those two. I just don't love tackling this Houston team. Jordan Alvarez loses nothing lefty-lefty. He's up to 13 home runs at 216 ISO, 148 WRC plus, 292, 375, 08. It hasn't been a Judgian kind of a surge, but he's come roaring back to life after a bit of a cool start. No Kyle Tucker in the projected lineup. He's banged up. I forget what the injury is. Forget whether he's on the IL, but presumably not going to be here. Did he go on the IL? Yeah. Retroactive to June 4. So he went on the IL over the weekend. Fouled a ball off of his right leg. So hopefully Tucker's back soon enough. But, it's a big ding to this lineup because he's also not at all diminished by facing lefties. And he's clearly one of the best hitters in baseball, but they're still tremendous up top. Jose Altuve for 51-36. He's slashing 297, 348, 454, a 130 WRC plus, 10 homers, 9 steals. Perfectly in line with expectations. Alex Bregman does have 9 homers. He's up to a 170 ISO. He's up to a positive 104 WRC plus, 237, 303, 407. Trying to prove that the rumors of his demise were exaggerated, and in the midst of a bit of a bounce back. Still very low strikeout, still very cheap at $4,200 on DraftKings. 32 on FanDuel. We're coming closer to the normal pricing, but this on DraftKings is very, very cheap. Jeremy Pena at 41, 3,000, a very playable shortstop, 5 home runs, 9 steals, creating runs 12% better than average. Doesn't really hit the ball overly hard, but hits it regularly and effectively. 300, 332, 407, striking out at just a 16% clip, not walking at all at 3.3%. Between these two, that's a ton of balls in play behind all this quality that these guys provide, all the on base that those guys provide. It's a really good combination of factors that makes this Astros offense go. Just to say it one more time for anybody new, low strikeout rate is very good just universally. Normally you'd think, low walk rate, that's not great. But for DFS, this combined with that just equals a ton of balls in play, and you're getting it from guys who hit the ball effectively hard. So both Jeremy Pena and Jainer Diaz are very interesting in the heart of this Astros lineup. Diaz up to 7 home runs on the year, a 151 ISO, 95 WRC plus. Jake Myers for 33-27, effectively priced for a guy with 6 home runs, 5 steals, a decent triple slash, the ability to get on base, a fairly effective run creator with a little bit of power. Mauricio Dubon, 3,000, 2,500, definitely a more interesting option at 3 positions on FanDuel for 25 than just in the outfield for 3,000. 297, 325, 393 though, creating runs 6% better than average, 2 homers, 2 steals, been very, very good. Jose Abreu, not very good. 90% worse than average so far for run creation. Very cheap at first base. He and Anthony Rizzo have been in a race to the bottom over the last 6 months of baseball season, if you look at it. Chas McCormick, 3,600, 2,400. Underperforming expectations after taking a bump to start the season. 114 plate appearances of meh. But over time, a player we've gone to a lot from the bottom of this lineup. Last year, 22 homers, 19 steals, and a bit of a breakout. Created runs 33% better than average. Year before, when he was more sneaky than that, 14 home runs, but a 114 WRC+. Was always a guy that we like down the bottom because he tends to hit the ball pretty hard. So I like Chas McCormick if nobody else is going there. If he gets popular for some reason, you can move off and go to one of these other guys. If he moves up the lineup, if he's popular here or something like that, then it's a different story. Then you go to him regardless. If he gets popular in the 9 spot, the lack of plate appearance opportunity kind of starts to offset the quality. If you're going to Giants bets, which I think you can certainly do, he had a scorching hot Elliot Ramos at the top of the lineup. For just $3,900 on DraftKings, $3,500 on FanDuel, that is a dramatic difference in price. Very, very cheap over here. That's an interesting bat to have that cheap. In 121 plate appearances, he's turned 15.9% barrels and 58% hard hits into 6 home runs at 219 ISO. He's created runs 70% better than average. He's gotten on at a 405 clip. He's been tremendous for this team so far. Really finding his form in the show. Patty Bailey, if he's hitting second, is an interesting catcher option against this pitcher. 3,400, 2,600 across sites. He's got 4 home runs and 150 chances this year. He's created runs 21% better than average. Gotten on at a 342 clip. Capable of hitting the ball hard, drawing walks, putting bat on ball. Interesting catcher bat if he's here. If he's down here, he's less interesting. He's playable, but less interesting. That's a really interesting spot for that money. Matt Chapman, 4,800. Very effective premium contact skills. 11.5% barrels, 48.6% hard hits. It's down a little bit from last year, down a little bit from the year before. 8 home runs on the season, a 167 ISO. He's created runs 11% better than average. Effective enough third base bat for the money. Conforto for 45-31, easy to play. 8 home runs on the season, a 200 ISO. Nice little bounce back for him over 178 plate appearances. 9.6% barrels, 44.8% hard hits. I don't know if you guys can hear Joker back here panting. I don't know what he's been doing, but he's sitting back there like, dying. You all right, buddy? Huh? Breathe. Breathe. Jorge Soler, 4,200, 2,700. 7 home runs. Really disappointing triple slash from Soler so far. 88 WRC plus. But a power bat that could switch gets thrown any given day, and you can see a big surge given his ability. So far this year, premium contact is like cut in half. It's been bad. Not getting their investment, getting return on their investment in San Francisco right now. But again, just the ability to flip that switch at any point. Wilmer Flores, 35-26 across sites. Don't love the option. He's also really underperformed so far this year. 84 WRC plus, 4 home runs. That said, this time last year, we would have been talking about Wilmer for a cheap price. So another guy that I do have a little bit of belief in. He was just never nearly as high end as Jorge Soler. But he is low strikeout, so you're at least buying some balls in play from Wilmer. It's just he hasn't been hitting them with the quality that he used to. And that's a big dip, right? From here, which is elite contact, to here, at least you can still give me something. You're still driving the ball with regularity, just not at the crazy elite level that you used to. If you go from just kind of average to below average to significantly below average, this is more problematic in terms of like finding quality for cheap. Yaz, Tider Estrada, Brett Wisely from the bottom of the lineup. Playable parts, mix and match kind of a sense if you're going to a bunch of Giants lineups. Estrada has 8 home runs on the season, only stolen 1 base. Yaz has 7 home runs, 179 ISO for Yaz, 158 for Estrada. And then Brett Wisely, lefty bat with multi-position eligibility for cheap prices. Over 50 plate appearances, he's created runs 8% better than average. Decent little triple slash. Minor amount of power. Astros bats way up top, probably followed by Arrighetti value on DraftKings, I want to say, maybe. Then Giants bats. Then Kyle Harrison on either site. Right? Probably something like that. Astros, Arrighetti, Giants bats. Harrison, Arrighetti on FanDuel. Something along those lines. Good boy. Can you go lie down, please? That was our slate, gang. Top to bottom. Kirk in for Jensen. Keep on doing that. I hate that. Monty chiming in. Tucker was on crutches, but now is walking. That's good. Didn't realize he was on crutches. I knew that he had taken the ball off of his foot, but that sucks. Thank you, Inside Foot, Outside Foot. Appreciate you coming out, buddy. So cheers, love the show. Appreciative of your efforts. Appreciative of you conjuring that Schneeman name. That would have driven me completely bonkers. DK has him, but he's unplayable. Who's that about? Locklear? That's weird. So pitching board, top of the board, easy. Dylan Cease, Logan Gilbert, 1-2. 1-1A, whatever you want to call them. Slightly higher ceiling for Cease just based on his tremendous strikeout stuff. But Gilbert certainly capable of striking out hitters and Slightly better matchup against the White Sox, but both of those teams very, very targetable with both of those pitchers. They're tremendous if you can figure out a way to put them both together while still having any bats at all in your lineup on DraftKings. Go for it. Either one of those guys at the top of the board on FanDuel, no problem. Eric Fede uncomfortably from the 3 spot. Love the matchup against Seattle. We're going to be doing it all year long as they continue to underperform like they have. Tons of strikeout upside. He's been just good enough to get away with it, especially when it comes to strikeouts. 86 is a little bit more than I want to pay on FanDuel, but I think it's in play. I think you can do it, and I think you probably should across a bunch of lineups. If you're building one, I get not using Eric Fede on FanDuel, believe me. 7,800 on DraftKings, much more in the mix. Chris Paddock, probably going to be your most popular pitcher on both sites, 7,800, 7,100. No reason in the world to think that Chris Paddock can't succeed here outside of the baseball gods just zapping him for a bad start. But the price is effective. Even if he has a rough day, it's still the correct move to go to that price against that Rockies team with a pitcher of that quality too. I mean, Paddock has had his rough spots for sure. The numbers aren't great, but he's got upside. He's got talent. Carlos Rodon, just believable where he is, 9,400, 8,800. Priced like Carlos Rodon in this spot this year. Projected like him Carlos Rodon in this spot this year. Not an ideal matchup against the Royals. They've been good enough for run creation. There's a little power in the lineup, and they're patient enough in terms of avoiding the strikeouts, and he's gotten a little bit lucky. So I can see the upside. I can see the downside. It's a little bit of a both sides are there. Same thing for Jose Barrios. Pitcher I don't love. Price just kind of like who he is in the middle of the board on FanDuel. Don't really need to go to it, but I think he's in the mix if you're building 150. On DraftKings, he's definitely more in the mix because he's only 8,000 over there. It's a big price difference. So I do think he's more effective on the DraftKings slate, but I like that Brewers lineup, and I like that Brewers lineup the way they align against him. I almost said the way they line up against him. The way they align against Jose Barrios here, I can see the upside there. So 2 firm both sides are games in that one. And then the next one up is kind of a both sides-er as well. Arrighetti against the Giants. I could see a lot of success for 6,500 on the DraftKings slate. Kyle Harrison against the Astros. I really don't like it nearly as much. I just give that Astros lineup a lot of credit. They're very, very, very low strikeout. They've got a lot of power against lefties, and Harrison hasn't been great. So really, to me, I think that the cut line is Spencer Arrighetti, but I wouldn't quibble with Kyle Harrison because I do believe in the talent. I wouldn't quibble with Colin Ray because he's very, very cheap. He projects out okay against an underperforming but low strikeout Blue Jays team. So you got to thread the needle if you go to Colin Ray, where he's got to give you, 6 pretty clean innings and find a couple extra strikeouts that wouldn't usually be there against the Blue Jays. I wouldn't quibble with Seth Lugo at 8,400. I just don't love the FanDuel price. 97 is a big, big price to pay for a pitcher of Lugo's talent against that Yankees lineup. Joey Estes, 76-68. Again, against the Padres, it's not the most threatening group of hitters in the world. There are some overperformances, there are some underperformances going on, but they are effectively low strikeout. So I just question what the ceiling is like. It's much more a $6,800 DraftKings play than a $7,600 FanDuel play. Don't think I'd do it on the blue side, but he's in play for SP2 shares just as a dart in a cheap sense on DraftKings. If you're building a bunch of lineups, if you're building one, I don't think you go there. I think there's just easier spots. If you're building one and you need somebody in the 6,000s, I think it's Arrighetti all day. 65 versus 62 for Ray against the Blue Jays or 68 for Estes. That said, if you can afford the 600 more for Chris Paddock, even with the popularity, I think that's probably your move. And then Dakota Hudson's also on the slate. Mr. Judge, top of the board. Soto second if he plays. Stanton third, assuming he's in the lineup. Pretty killer power 3-man for the Yankees as usual. Jordan Alvarez, solidly on the mark for home run upside against Kyle Harrison with the power and the contact that Harrison's allowed. And again, no reason to go away from Alvarez just because he's facing a lefty. Even a good lefty. Doesn't matter. Just doesn't matter. I think the outlier name on this board is Michael Toglia again. For one, coming out of that Colorado lineup. But for another, just not a name that you would necessarily expect to be above the magic number. But he's got a lot of power in that bat. What was it, 4 home runs and 50 plate appearances? Doesn't do anything else. Hits down toward the bottom of the lineup, but maybe a cheapo home run for 24-36. Raleigh, believable power upside for Seattle. You get 3 guys. Oh, actually, now we're down to 2 guys there. No Danny Jansen in that Toronto lineup, apparently. But you get these 2 above or at the magic number from Toronto. You get Dalton Varsho, who, again, is today's home run pick of the day, from 9.46. Then you take a dip down to here, but those are 2 quality bats in terms of name recognition, recent history over the last handful of seasons for both guys. There's a lot of quality shown to me for Toronto against a pitcher that, again, I've targeted fairly regularly with some success. Bregman showing a little bit of power upside. Tatis, obviously. Luis Robert, obviously. Everybody knows we're going to those guys more often than we're not when we play those lineups. Rhys Hoskins, if you go to that Milwaukee lineup, which, again, that top end is pretty interesting. Contreras, Yelich right there. And then, what's his face with the on base and stolen base upside? So I think Rhys Hoskins is your 4th man in on a Milwaukee stack. Not a bad play. Kansas City power just kind of showing through the mid-range, but several guys effectively. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. So 4 guys from 7.9 to 9.5. Some effective enough power showing for Kansas City as well. It's a good one, gang. Hit the like button for me. Subscribe if you haven't. Coming up on 5:40 off of our 3:30 start. We did 2 hours plus on a 6-gamer. Stretched it as long as we could. I know that's what we're looking for is just minutes, right? Some people do this quicker and more efficiently. I don't have it in me to not talk about all these different little angles and everything. So I appreciate the hell out of all you guys who hang out through all this nonsense every day. You guys absolutely rock. The guys and gals out there who pull it up and listen to it on 3 times speed on your way home just before lock. I love you guys as well. Hit the like universally. Check out our guys over at acemind.io. Use promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, for 20% off your first month over there. Keep an eye on the website. The projections will be updated in the next little bit for all confirmed lineups. 7:40 starts, so we still got 2 hours to kill in between now and then. I'll be in Discord. I'll be hanging out, building lineups and everything. Any questions? Hop into the Discord. Let me drop one last quick little link. I'll drop a new invite to the Discord into the chat here in case anybody's not in there. A lot of good WNBA chatter going on in the basketball channel in Discord. Non-stop baseball chatter going on. That's about it, gang. I can hear the dog's water bowl and the cat's water bowl in the other room. It sounds like somebody's peeing in the other room, but I know that it's the water bowl. It's one of those automated ones. So when they drink out of the bottom, once it goes down to a certain level, it just starts like making splashing sounds. It means I need to refill it. It's nice having that as a cue. I'm going to go refill the dog's water. Good luck out there tonight, gang. Somebody go win something. We'll see you tomorrow. As I can't find the thing for the mouse to actually end the show. You ever do that? Like you move the mouse and then you don't instantly spot where the arrow is for whatever reason. And then it's like, the hell am I doing? Anyway, goodbye.